I promised to marry you when we were 7 years old. The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. Daniel Hayes stared across the candlelit table at the woman who was supposed to be a stranger, his blind date, his fresh start, his chance at moving forward. But Claire Monroe wasn't a stranger at all. She was the ghost of every childhood dream he'd buried, every promise he'd forgotten how to keep. And now, 23 years later, she was sitting 3 feet away, looking at him like she'd been waiting all this time for him to remember. Before we dive into this story of second chances and childhood promises, if you're enjoying this journey, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. The restaurant was too nice for Daniel Hayes. That was his first thought as he stood outside Marcello's, watching well-dressed couples drift through the frosted glass doors like they belonged in a world he'd forgotten existed. The valet eyed him with practiced neutrality, not quite judging the 3-year-old sedan with the car seat visible in the back, but not judging it either. Daniel tugged at his collar, suddenly aware that his only decent shirt was probably a size too small now. When had he last worn it? Emily's kindergarten graduation? No, that had been the blue one. This was the shirt from… Christ, he couldn't even remember. "You look fine," he muttered to himself, earning a curious glance from a woman in heels that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. "You look like a man who has no business being here, but fine." His phone buzzed. Marcus, of course. "You better not be in your car." Daniel glanced back at the sedan where he'd seriously considered just sitting for the next hour before texting that the date had gone fine and driving home to the safety of homework help and Disney movies. "I'm going in," he typed back. "Good. And Danny, try to smile. You look less serial killery when you smile. That's reassuring, thanks. You know what I mean. Just be yourself. The good parts of yourself, not the part that alphabetizes the spice rack." Daniel pocketed his phone and took a breath that didn't quite fill his lungs. 6 years. It had been 6 years since Sarah left, since she'd decided that motherhood and small-town life weren't the adventure she'd signed up for, since she'd kissed Emily's forehead one last time and driven away with promises to visit soon that had devolved into birthday cards with increasingly generic messages. 6 years of Daniel learning to braid hair through YouTube tutorials, of memorizing the lyrics to songs about friendship and magic, of becoming both mother and father to a little girl who deserved so much better than his clumsy attempts at wholeness. And now Marcus and Jenna, his well-meaning friends who refused to accept that Daniel was perfectly content being alone, had decided it was time for him to rejoin the living. Hence, the blind date. The restaurant that was too nice, the collar that was too tight, the panic that was too real. "Reservation for Hayes," he told the hostess, a young woman with a smile so professional it could have been manufactured. "I'm meeting someone." "Of course, right this way." The restaurant was all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of carefully curated atmosphere that whispered romantic without quite shouting it. Daniel followed the hostess through a maze of tables where people laughed and leaned close and looked like they knew exactly what they were doing with their lives. He felt like an imposter in a play he hadn't rehearsed for. "She's already here," the hostess said, gesturing to a corner booth near the window. And that was when Daniel's world stopped turning. The woman sitting at the table had her back partially to him, dark hair falling in waves over a navy dress, her fingers absently tracing the rim of a water glass. There was something in the slope of her shoulders, the angle of her neck, the way she held herself with that particular combination of grace and uncertainty that made Daniel's heart perform a complicated maneuver somewhere between his throat and his stomach. She turned. Time didn't just stop. It fractured, splintered, became a thing of before and after, and Daniel stood at the exact point of breaking. "Claire?" Her eyes went wide. Green. He'd forgotten how green, like summer leaves after rain. Like the whole world had been beige until this exact moment. Her hand froze on the glass. Her lips parted. And for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years, they just stared at each other like survivors of the same disaster, shocked to find they weren't the only ones who'd made it out. "Daniel?" His name came out barely louder than a breath. "Daniel Hayes?" The hostess cleared her throat delicately. I'll give you two a moment. Your server will be right with you. She disappeared, and Daniel stood there like an idiot, his brain trying to process information that didn't make sense. This wasn't possible. This was Claire Monroe. Claire from Lancaster Elementary. Claire from the house with the tire swing. Claire from 1,000 summer afternoons that smelled like cut grass and popsicles and the fearless certainty of childhood. Claire, who'd moved away when they were 10 years old and taken a piece of his world with her. Claire, who was supposed to be a stranger named Jennifer. I thought... Daniel's voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. I thought I was meeting someone named Jennifer Chen. You are. I was. Claire shook her head, and he saw the flush creeping up her neck. I go by my middle name now, Jennifer Claire, professionally. It's a long story. Jesus. Yeah. She laughed, but it came out shaky. Are you going to sit down or just stand there looking like you've seen a ghost? Daniel sat. Or rather, his legs gave out, and the chair happened to be there. His hands found the table, solid oak beneath his palms, proof that this was actually happening and not some stress-induced hallucination brought on by too many late nights and too much coffee. I can't... He ran a hand through his hair. What are the odds? What are the actual statistical odds? I have no idea, but they can't be good. Claire was still staring at him like he might disappear if she blinked. Daniel Hayes, my God, you look exactly the same. I look nothing like I did at 10. No, she gestured vaguely. Your face, your eyes, the way you're sitting with your shoulders all tense like you're waiting for bad news. You always did that. Had he? Daniel couldn't remember. His memories of that time were sun-faded and soft around the edges, more feeling than fact. But Claire apparently remembered details he'd let slip away. He had to stop, had to swallow against the dryness in his throat. You're obviously not 10 anymore either. It was possibly the stupidest thing he'd ever said, but Claire smiled, and it was the same smile from 23 years ago, just deeper now, weighted with whatever she'd lived through in the time between then and now. No, she said softly, not 10 anymore. The server appeared, chipper and oblivious to the tectonic shift happening at table 12. Good evening. Can I start you folks off with some drinks? Wine? Cocktails? Wine, Claire said immediately. Red, whatever you recommend. A large glass. Make that 2, Daniel added. The server beamed like they'd just made his night. Excellent choice. I'll be right back. Silence fell between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, electric, the kind of quiet that happens when two people have too much to say and no idea where to start. Daniel's mind was racing, trying to reconcile the girl from his memories with the woman across from him. Same freckle on her left cheekbone. Same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. But different too, older, obviously, but also there was something in her eyes, some knowledge that came from living, from being broken and putting yourself back together with visible seams. So, Claire said finally, Marcus and Jenna set you up? You know Marcus and Jenna? I work with Jenna at the design firm. She pressed her lips together, fighting a smile. They've been trying to set me up for months. I finally agreed just to get them to stop. I didn't know. They never mentioned your first name, just kept saying our friend Danny and how he was such a good guy, and they call me Danny, Daniel said numbly. I go by Daniel now. And I go by Jennifer. Claire shook her head. They had no idea, did they, that we knew each other? How could they? I never... Daniel paused. Had he ever told Marcus about Claire? About the girl from elementary school who'd been his partner in every school project, who'd learned to ride a bike the same week he did, who'd sat with him at lunch every single day and made him feel like the world was a little less scary because he wasn't navigating it alone? No, he'd never mentioned her. She was from before Sarah, before Emily, before his life had become this series of obligations and exhausted nights. She was from when he was still Daniel Hayes, who believed in promises and possibilities. This is insane, Claire said. Completely insane. We could leave. We could just laugh about it and leave and tell them it didn't work out. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, at the way her fingers were still nervously tracing the rim of her glass, at the small scar above her eyebrow that he didn't remember, at the way she was watching him with something that looked like hope and terror in equal measure. "We could," he agreed. Neither of them moved. The server returned with wine in glasses the size of fish bowls, cheerfully oblivious to the tension. "Here we are. Have you had a chance to look at the menu?" "Give us a few minutes," Claire said, and her voice was steadier than Daniel felt. "Of course. Take your time." He vanished again, and Claire picked up her wine glass with both hands, like she needed the stability. Daniel did the same. They raised their glasses in an awkward automatic toast that neither of them had planned. "To..." Claire trailed off. "To the weirdest coincidence in the history of blind dates?" Perfect. The glasses clinked. They drank. The wine was good. Too good for Daniel to properly appreciate when his entire nervous system was firing on all cylinders. Claire set down her glass and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You live here? In Riverside?" "About 20 minutes outside. Same house I grew up in, actually. My dad left it to me when he passed." "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "It was 5 years ago. Heart attack. Quick." Daniel didn't know why he was sharing this with her, except that it felt wrong to lie or gloss over the shape his life had taken. "What about you? You're back?" 2 years now. I was in Chicago for a while, then Portland, then a lot of places. She twisted the stem of her glass. "I kept thinking I was looking for something, but I think I was just running." "From what?" "Everything. Nothing. Myself, probably." She met his eyes. "You know how it is when you're young and you think the problem is the place, so you keep moving, and then you wake up at 33 and realize you've been carrying the problem with you the whole time?" Daniel knew exactly what she meant. Even though he'd never moved, he'd just stayed in the same place and let it become unrecognizable around him. "Marcus said you have a daughter," Claire said, and there was a carefulness in her voice, like she was stepping on ice she wasn't sure would hold. And there it was. The moment when Daniel had to decide how much truth to offer. He could keep it vague, keep Emily as an abstract concept, a scheduling conflict that made him interesting but not complicated. Or he could be honest. He chose honest. "Emily. She's 8. 9 in April." Daniel pulled out his phone, swiped to his favorites, turned the screen toward Claire. Emily grinning gap-toothed at the camera, her hair in the braids Daniel had finally mastered after 6 months of YouTube tutorials and patient suffering. She's everything." Claire took the phone gently, like it was something precious. She studied the photo for a long moment, and when she looked up, her eyes were soft. "She's beautiful, Daniel. She looks just like you." "Poor kid." "I'm serious. Same eyes, same smile." She handed the phone back. "Where's her mom?" The question was inevitable, but it still landed like a punch. Daniel pocketed his phone, buying himself a second to figure out how to explain the unexplainable. "Gone. She left when Emily was 2. He kept his voice level, factual, the way he did when Emily asked questions he didn't know how to answer. "Decided family life wasn't for her. She sends cards on birthdays. Sometimes." Claire's expression shifted through a dozen emotions in the span of a heartbeat. Surprise, anger, sympathy, something that might have been recognition. "You've been doing it alone for 6 years? It's not as noble as it sounds. What else was I going to do? Most people would have fallen apart." "Who says I didn't?" Daniel tried for a smile. "You should see my kitchen. Cereal for dinner happens more often than I'd like to admit." "Cereal for dinner is a balanced meal. It has grains and milk." "That's what I tell Emily." They smiled at each other, and some of the strangeness eased. This was still Claire. Claire who'd defended him when Tommy Breslin called him a teacher's pet in 4th grade. Claire who'd helped him rescue a baby bird that had fallen from its nest, even though they both knew it probably wouldn't survive. Claire who'd made him feel brave when he was anything but. "What about you?" Daniel asked. "The blind date thing. I'm guessing there's no kids, no husband?" "No kids. And definitely no husband anymore." Claire took a long drink of wine. "I was engaged last year, actually. Very seriously engaged. Big ring, bigger venue booked, the whole production." "What happened?" I called it off 3 weeks before the wedding. She said it matter-of-factly, but Daniel heard the weight beneath the words. Everyone thought I was crazy. My mom still isn't speaking to me, but I couldn't. He was perfect on paper, successful, handsome, wanted all the same things I was supposed to want. But when I tried to imagine 50 years with him, all I felt was tired. Jesus. Yeah. So I gave back the ring, canceled everything, and became the official family disaster. My sister got married 6 months later and didn't ask me to be in the wedding party, if that tells you anything. I'm sorry, that must have been necessary, Claire finished. It was necessary. I'd rather be alone than empty. The words hung between them, honest and raw. Daniel understood completely. He'd felt empty plenty of times over the past 6 years, but never alone. Not with Emily climbing into his lap during Saturday morning cartoons, not with her small hand tucked into his at the grocery store, not with her sleepy voice mumbling, "Love you, Daddy," before she drifted off each night. The server reappeared, determined to actually take their order this time. They fumbled through the menu. Claire ordered salmon. Daniel picked pasta he couldn't pronounce. And the server left with promises of bread and a second round of wine they definitely needed. "This is so weird," Claire said once they were alone again. "Which part? All of it? I keep waiting to wake up. Like this is one of those dreams where you're back in elementary school, but you're your current age and nothing makes sense. If this is a dream, it's way nicer than the ones I usually have. Most of mine involve showing up to Emily's school play and realizing I forgot she had a school play." Claire laughed, and the sound was exactly the same as he remembered, bright and genuine and a little too loud for fancy restaurants. "Anxiety dreams. I have one where I'm at my wedding, the one I canceled, and I'm walking down the aisle and I realize I can't remember the groom's name." That's significantly more dramatic than forgetting a school play. I contain multitudes. They were flirting. Daniel realized it with a start. They were actually flirting, like people did on dates, like this was normal and not completely insane. And it felt good, natural, like slipping into a conversation they'd paused 23 years ago and were only now picking back up. The bread arrived, warm and perfect, and they both reached for it at the same time, hands colliding over the basket. They pulled back, laughing, and Claire gestured for him to go first. "So," she said as he buttered a slice, "tell me about the last 23 years. I want the full story." "That's a lot of years." "We have time, unless you turn into a pumpkin at 9. Emily's at a sleepover. I have until tomorrow morning. A whole night of freedom, living dangerously." Daniel smiled despite himself. "Okay, full story. After you moved—" "Wait," Claire held up a hand. "Before we get into all that, can I just ask something?" "Sure." "Do you remember?" Her voice went soft, uncertain in a way that made Daniel's chest tight. "I mean, do you actually remember us? Or is this are you being polite because I clearly remember, and you're too nice to say you have no idea who I am?" Daniel set down his bread. "Claire, I remember everything." "Everything?" "Mrs. Patterson's class. You sat 2 rows over and 1 seat up. You always wore those overalls with the sunflower patch on the pocket. You were obsessed with those books about the Babysitter's Club." "Oh my God!" Claire's hand flew to her mouth. "You do remember. You had a retainer you were supposed to wear at night, but you hated it, so you'd hide it in your desk during the day. You were terrified of bees. You could draw better than anyone in our grade. You taught me how to do a cartwheel." The memories were flooding back now, sharp and clear. "And you moved away right before 5th grade started. I showed up to school and you just weren't there." Claire's eyes were bright. "My dad got transferred. We had to move to Phoenix. I cried for a month. You never said goodbye." "I didn't know how to. I was 10 and heartbroken, and I didn't understand why everything had to change." She twisted her napkin between her fingers. "I thought about you, though, over the years, wondered what happened to you. If you remembered the girl who used to chase you around the playground." "You never chased me. I chased you." "That is absolutely not true. I chased you in 2nd grade when you said girls couldn't play soccer. And then you scored 3 goals and made me eat my words." "Exactly," Claire grinned. "You were very gracious about it, actually. You told me I played better than half the boys. You did play better than half the boys. They were smiling at each other like idiots, and Daniel felt something unclenching in his chest, something that had been tight for so long he'd stopped noticing it was there. This was easy. This was Claire. Even after 23 years, even as completely different people, this was still somehow easy. The food arrived, and they ate and talked and laughed, and Daniel couldn't remember the last time he'd lost track of time like this. Every story Claire told led to another question, another memory, another revelation about the lives they'd lived separately. She told him about her disastrous semester abroad in Paris, where she'd somehow ended up volunteering at a dog shelter instead of studying art history. He told her about the time he'd tried to fix Emily's favorite doll with superglue and accidentally glued his fingers together instead. "You're kidding," Claire said, nearly choking on her wine. "I wish I was. Emily thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. She called me Glue Dad for a week." "That's adorable." "That's mortifying." "It's both." The restaurant filled and emptied around them. Plates were cleared, dessert was declined, coffee was ordered and consumed. And through it all, Daniel felt the strangest sense of dislocation, like he was watching himself from outside his body, watching this version of Daniel Hayes who laughed too loud and leaned across the table and forgot to check his phone every 15 minutes to make sure Emily was okay. It was Claire who finally brought up the elephant that had been sitting quietly in the corner of the booth all evening. "Can I ask you something that might be weird?" she said, twisting her coffee cup. "After tonight, I don't think anything qualifies as weird anymore." "Fair point." She took a breath. "Do you remember what we used to say? When we were kids?" Daniel's heart kicked against his ribs. He knew exactly what she was talking about, but he needed to hear her say it first. "Which part?" he asked carefully. "The promise. The one we made." Claire met his eyes, and hers were impossibly green and impossibly vulnerable. "We were 7, I think. It was summer, and we were in that treehouse in your backyard, the one your dad built. I remember. And we made a promise." She said it quietly, like speaking too loud might shatter whatever fragile thing was forming between them. "We said that if we both grew up and we weren't married to other people by the time we were 30, we'd marry each other." There it was, the thing Daniel had been trying not to think about all night, the memory that had been pressing against the back of his consciousness like a hand against glass. He'd been 7 and fearless in the way only children can be. Claire had been wearing a yellow sundress, and she'd had popsicle stains on her fingers. They'd sat in that treehouse with their legs dangling over the edge, watching the sunset turn the sky purple and gold, and he'd said the words first, "When we grow up, I'm going to marry you." And Claire, practical even at 7, had said, "What if we meet other people?" So they'd compromised. A contingency plan. A promise that felt like forever when you were 7 and couldn't imagine 30 being a real thing that would ever happen. "I remember," Daniel said again. "We were so serious about it." Claire laughed, but it sounded sad. "We even wrote it down. Put it in that old cookie tin you kept your treasures in." "The blue one with the dent on the lid." "Yes!" Her eyes lit up. "God, I wonder if it's still there, if your dad kept it." Daniel's throat went tight. His dad had kept everything. The garage was still full of boxes Daniel hadn't had the heart to sort through. Childhood artwork, old report cards, baseball trophies from a sport he'd been mediocre at. Somewhere in there, probably, was a blue cookie tin with a piece of paper inside, bearing a promise written in crayon. "We were kids," he said, and hated how hollow it sounded. "I know, I'm not saying we should honor a contract made by second graders, Daniel. I'm just..." She trailed off, looking down at her hands. "I guess I'm just acknowledging that it's strange, that we made this ridiculous promise and then I disappeared, and then 23 years later we end up at the same restaurant on a blind date arranged by mutual friends neither of us knew we had. It's strange. It's more than strange. What would you call it?" "I don't know." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "Fate? Coincidence? A statistical anomaly that probably violates several laws of probability?" Claire smiled slightly. "You always did overthink everything. You always did cut straight to the point. Someone had to." They sat in the silence that followed. the weight of their shared history pressing down like atmosphere. Daniel's mind was racing. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. He was supposed to make polite conversation with a stranger, exchange pleasantries, maybe agree to a second date if things went well, and then drive home and slip back into his regular life of school pickups and bedtime stories and the comfortable numbness of routine. He wasn't supposed to rediscover the girl who'd been his first friend, his first promise, his first glimpse of what it meant to care about someone outside himself. He wasn't supposed to feel this pull in his chest, this magnetic draw toward someone he'd forgotten he was allowed to miss. "We should probably go," Claire said quietly. "It's late." Daniel checked his phone. Nearly 11. How had that happened? They split the check despite his protests, bundled into coats, and stepped out into the November night. The air was crisp and sharp, carrying the first whisper of winter. The parking lot was mostly empty now, just a handful of cars scattered under yellow streetlights. They walked slowly toward the vehicles, neither of them quite ready to end this yet. "I'm glad they set us up," Claire said finally. "Even though they had no idea what they were doing, I'm glad I got to see you again." "Me too. Your daughter's lucky, you know, to have you." The compliment hit him harder than it should have. "I'm the lucky one." They reached Claire's car, a sensible silver sedan that suited her perfectly. She unlocked it but didn't get in, just stood there with her hand on the door handle, looking at him like she was trying to memorize his face. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Would you—" She stopped, bit her lip. "Would you want to do this again sometime? Not as a blind date, just as us?" The question hung in the cold air between them, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. Daniel thought about Emily, about the careful life he'd built for her, about all the ways letting someone in could go wrong. He thought about Sarah leaving, about the look on Emily's face when she'd finally stopped asking when Mommy was coming home. He thought about Claire at 7, promising to marry him under a treehouse roof. He thought about Claire at 33, standing in a parking lot and taking a chance. "Yes," he said. "I'd like that." Her smile could have powered the whole city. "Really?" "Really. But full disclosure, my schedule is insane. Between work and Emily, I'm basically a chaos muppet most of the time." "I like chaos muppets. And if we do this, Emily has to be part of the equation. I won't introduce her to someone who's just passing through." "I wouldn't expect you to." Claire's expression turned serious. "Daniel, I'm not asking to dive into anything. I'd like to get to know you again, the real you. The one who exists now, not just the one I remember." It was the right answer, the only answer that could have worked. "Okay," Daniel said, "then let's figure it out." They exchanged numbers, actual phone numbers, not just Instagram handles or LinkedIn connections. Claire programmed him into her phone as Daniel Hayes, Treehouse Promise, and showed him, laughing at her own sentimentality. Daniel just saved her as Claire, because adding anything else felt like tempting fate. "Text me when you get home," Claire said, "so I know you made it safely." "It's 20 minutes. I'll be fine. Humor me." "Okay, I'll text you." She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick and soft and smelling like wine and perfume and possibility. Then she got in her car before he could properly react, started the engine, and rolled down the window. "Thank you for tonight, Daniel Hayes. Thank you for not running away when you realized who I was." The thought crossed my mind. "Mine too." She laughed, put the car in reverse, and drove away. Daniel stood in the parking lot watching her taillights disappear into the night, his hand pressed against the cheek she'd kissed like he could hold on to the feeling. His phone buzzed. Marcus. "So? How'd it go?" Daniel looked at the message, thought about how to possibly explain what had just happened, and settled for, "You're not going to believe this." He drove home in a daze, the radio playing songs he didn't hear, his mind replaying the entire evening on a loop. Claire Monroe. Claire, who'd been his best friend before he knew what that meant. Claire, who'd promised to marry him in a treehouse. Claire, who'd just walked back into his life like no time had passed at all. The house was dark when he pulled into the driveway. Emily was at Madison's house for the night, which meant Daniel had the place to himself. a rarity he usually cherished, but tonight made the house feel cavernous and empty. He went through the motions of checking locks and turning off lights, but his mind was elsewhere. In the garage, because of course he had to check, he found the box labeled Danny, childhood stuff, in his father's careful handwriting. It took 20 minutes of digging, but he found it, the blue cookie tin with the dent on the lid, exactly where it had always been. Inside was a collection of treasures that meant everything to a 7-year-old and nothing to anyone else. Bottle caps, smooth stones, a dried 4-leaf clover, a plastic ring from a vending machine, and there, folded carefully at the bottom, a piece of notebook paper with the edges carefully colored in with marker. Daniel unfolded it with hands that shook slightly. The handwriting was atrocious, a 7-year-old's scrawl, half the letters backwards, but the words were clear. Daniel and Claire promise to marry each other when they are 30 if they are not married to other people. Signed with blood. It wasn't blood, it was red marker, but they'd been very serious about it. Daniel sank down onto an overturned bucket, staring at the paper, and something that felt dangerously close to laughter bubbled up in his chest. This was insane. All of it. The odds, the timing, the way Claire had looked at him across that table like he was someone worth remembering. He pulled out his phone. "Made it home safely," he texted, "found something interesting in my garage." The reply came almost immediately. Claire. "The cookie tin?" Daniel. "The cookie tin." Claire. "And?" Daniel. "The contract is still valid. Apparently we signed it in blood." Claire. "That was red marker, and you know it." Daniel. "Details." He took a photo of the paper and sent it to her. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Claire. "Oh my God, I can't believe that still exists." Daniel. "My dad kept everything." Claire. "We were so serious." Daniel. "We were 7. Claire. "Best age to make life decisions, obviously." Daniel smiled at his phone like a teenager, sitting in his garage at midnight, holding a promise written in marker and time. Claire. "For what it's worth, 7-year-old me had good taste." Daniel. "Yeah?" Claire. "Yeah. Present-day me thinks so too." Daniel stared at the message, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. This was dangerous. This was opening doors he'd locked for good reasons. This was inviting chaos into the careful order he'd built for Emily's sake. This was also Claire who remembered him, who made him laugh, who'd kissed his cheek in a parking lot and made him feel like maybe, just maybe, there was still room in his life for something beyond survival. Daniel. "Get some sleep, Claire Monroe. We'll talk soon." Claire. "Promise?" Daniel. "I'm pretty good at keeping those." He sat in the garage for a long time after that, holding the paper, thinking about promises and possibilities and the strange architecture of fate. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight. Outside, the November wind rattled the garage door. And inside Daniel's chest, something that had been dormant for 6 years flickered back to life. It felt terrifying. It felt like hope. It felt like maybe the story wasn't over after all. Maybe it was just beginning again, 23 years late, but right on time. The morning after found Daniel standing in Madison's driveway at 9:30, coffee in hand, waiting for Emily to finish saying goodbye to her sleepover companions. Through the front window, he could see a chaos of sleeping bags and cereal bowls, 3 8-year-old girls still in their pajamas, and Madison's mother Jennifer looking like she'd survived a natural disaster. "Never again," Jennifer mouthed at him through the glass, and Daniel raised his coffee cup in sympathetic salute. Emily emerged 5 minutes later, backpack dangling from one shoulder, hair in a lopsided ponytail that suggested she'd done it herself, her face split by a grin that made Daniel's chest warm despite the cold. "Daddy?" She launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, breathing in the smell of maple syrup and strawberry shampoo. We stayed up until midnight and watched 2 movies, and Madison's mom let us make popcorn with M&Ms mixed in, and it was the best night ever. Sounds like it. Did you get any sleep? Some. A little, maybe like 2 hours? Emily pulled back to look at him seriously. But it was worth it because we also did makeovers, and Madison let me use her purple eyeshadow, and I looked so pretty. Daddy, you should have seen. I wish I had. Daniel set her down, ruffled her hair. Ready to go home. Can we get donuts? We literally just talked about all the sugar you consumed last night. That was last night. This is today. Totally different. Daniel couldn't argue with that logic. Fine, but just one. 2. 1.5. Deal. Emily grabbed his hand, swinging it as they walked to the car. She chattered the entire drive to the donut shop, recounting every detail of the sleepover with the kind of vivid specificity only children could manage. Daniel listened and made appropriate noises, but part of his mind was elsewhere, on a parking lot conversation, on green eyes and old promises, on the weight of a phone in his pocket that might buzz at any moment. It didn't buzz until they were home. Emily settled on the couch with cartoons and her donut and a half. Daniel in the kitchen pretending to clean up breakfast dishes he'd never made. Claire. Morning. How's your head? Daniel smiled at his phone like an idiot. Daniel. Fine. Only had 2 glasses. You? Claire. Slight wine headache, but nothing fatal. Worth it. Daniel. The wine or the company? Claire. Definitely the company. The wine was just okay. He was still grinning when Emily appeared in the doorway, studying him with the unnerving perception children sometimes possessed. Why are you smiling at your phone? What? I'm not. You totally are. You look like you do when I show you a good report card. Emily climbed onto a bar stool, chin propped in her hands. Who are you texting? Just a friend. What friend? A friend from when I was a kid. We ran into each other last night. Emily's eyes went wide. At your date? Was she your date? Daniel had forgotten he'd told Emily about the blind date. Or rather, Emily had overheard him on the phone with Marcus and had interrogated him until he'd confessed. She'd been weirdly excited about it, which had made Daniel feel both better and worse about the whole thing. She was, Daniel admitted, but it turns out we already knew each other from elementary school. Small world. That's like in the movie. The one where the princess doesn't know she's a princess, but then she finds out and everything is different. Emily bounced on her stool. What's her name? Claire. Is she nice? Very nice. Is she pretty? Emily, well, is she? Emily fixed him with a look that suggested she would not be distracted. Because you're pretty, so she should be pretty too. That's fair. I'm not pretty. You are when you smile. You should smile more. She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, took a bite that was mostly just testing the skin with her front teeth. Are you going to see her again? Maybe, if that's okay with you. Emily considered this with the gravity of a judge. Will she be nice to me? The question hit Daniel square in the chest. This was what it came down to, wasn't it? Not whether he liked Claire or whether the chemistry was there or whether the past meant anything at all. It came down to whether bringing someone into their lives would make Emily's world bigger or just more complicated. I wouldn't introduce you to anyone who wasn't nice to you, Daniel said carefully. But we're just getting to know each other again, okay? It's not serious or anything. Okay. Emily hopped down from the stool. But if she's mean, you have to stop seeing her. That's the rule. Deal. And if she doesn't like donuts, that's also suspicious. Noted. Emily skipped back to the living room, apparently satisfied, and Daniel returned to his phone. Daniel, just got interrogated by an 8-year-old. Apparently there will be a donut test at some point. Claire, I'm excellent with donuts. What kind does she like? Daniel, chocolate frosted with sprinkles. Very specific about the sprinkles. Claire, a girl of taste. I approve. They texted on and off throughout the day, the conversation flowing easy and natural between the rhythm of Daniel's Sunday routine. He sent her a photo of Emily's attempt at making slime that had resulted in a kitchen catastrophe. She sent back a picture of her apartment, boxes still half unpacked despite living there for 2 years, with the caption, "I'm great at life decisions." By evening, when Emily was in bed and the house had settled into its familiar quiet, Daniel found himself on the couch with his phone, the TV on, but unwatched. Claire, can I call you, or is that too much too fast? Daniel stared at the message, his heart rate picking up for no good reason. Daniel, call me. His phone rang 30 seconds later. Hi, Claire said, and her voice was different over the phone. Closer, more intimate, like she was right there in the room with him instead of wherever she was. Hi yourself. Is this weird? This feels weird. Good weird, but weird. Everything about this is weird. Daniel settled back against the couch cushions. But yeah, good weird. I couldn't stop thinking about last night, about seeing you again. He heard rustling on her end like she was moving around. I keep expecting to wake up and find out I imagined the whole thing. If you imagined it, then we're having a shared hallucination, which seems medically unlikely. Medically unlikely. Very romantic, Daniel. I'm out of practice. When's the last time you did this? Dated, I mean. Daniel had to think about it. Actual dating, 6 years. There was one disastrous attempt about 3 years ago that Marcus set up. We made it through appetizers before she asked if Emily came with baggage from the abandonment, and I faked a work emergency. Oh my God. Yeah, haven't really tried since then. Between work and Emily, there's not much room for... He paused. This is a terrible sales pitch, isn't it? No, it's honest. I appreciate honest. Claire was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Anything. When I saw you last night, before I knew it was you, just when you were walking toward the table, I remember thinking that you looked like someone who'd lived through something real. Not in a bad way, just in a way that meant you understood things. Does that make sense? I think so. And then when I realized it was you, it was like... She made a frustrated sound. I'm not explaining this right. It was like the universe was saying, pay attention to this one, Claire. This one matters. Daniel's throat went tight. I'm not that special. You were always that special. You just didn't know it. They talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. Claire told him about her job at the design firm, about the clients who wanted their logos to pop without knowing what that meant, about her boss who was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. Daniel told her about his work at the engineering firm, about the projects that kept him up at night, about the satisfaction of solving problems that looked impossible on paper. They talked about their families. Claire's parents had divorced when she was in college, messy, bitter, the kind that turned children into messengers. Her mother had remarried, moved to Florida, sent passive-aggressive emails about Claire's life choices. Her father lived in Seattle with a woman 20 years younger and acted like starting a new family meant he could forget his first one. I'm sorry, Daniel said. That sounds awful. It is what it is. You learn to build your own family, friends, people who choose you back. She paused. What about yours? You mentioned your dad passed. 5 years ago. Heart attack, like I said. He was a good man, quiet, steady. He taught me how to fix things, how to be patient. Daniel smiled at the memory. He would have loved Emily. He died 2 months before she was born. Oh, Daniel. My mom's still around. She moved to Arizona to be near her sister after Dad died. We talk every week. She visits for holidays. He didn't mention how his mother had cried when Sarah left, how she'd offered to move back to help with Emily, how Daniel had turned her down because he needed to prove he could do this on his own. Do you have siblings? Claire asked. A sister, Rachel. She's in Boston with her husband and their twins. We're close, but we don't see each other much. Geography and life and all that. I always wished I had a brother. My sister and I, we're not close. Different wavelengths, I guess. They drifted through topics like channel surfing, comfortable enough to let silences happen without rushing to fill them. Claire told him about her disaster year in Portland, where she'd tried to be a serious artist and ended up waiting tables and dating a musician who'd introduced her to concepts like polyamory and my truth that really just meant he wanted to sleep around without consequences. I came home at 29, she said, tail between my legs, ego in tatters, convinced I'd wasted my entire 20s chasing the wrong things. Had you? Some of them, but not all. She sighed. I learned what I didn't want, which is valuable even if it's painful. I learned that I'm not built for casual. I learned that finding yourself sometimes just means running away from yourself in different cities. That's pretty wise for someone who claims to have wasted a decade. I have my moments. It was past midnight when they finally acknowledged that they should probably sleep. Daniel had work in the morning, Emily had school. Real life was waiting to resume, but neither of them seemed to want to hang up. Daniel? Claire's voice was soft, almost tentative. Yeah? I meant what I said about wanting to do this right. I don't want to mess up whatever this is by rushing or assuming or, I don't know, I just want to be careful with it, with you. I want that too. And with Emily in the picture, careful is the only way I know how to do this. When can I see you again? Daniel pulled up his mental calendar, grimacing at how packed it was. This week is brutal. I have a project deadline Wednesday, and Emily has soccer on Thursday. And it's okay. I'm patient. Friday? Daniel offered. Emily's with my mom for the weekend. I could do Friday night. Friday's perfect. We could do dinner again? Something more casual this time. That sounds great. They said goodnight 3 times before actually hanging up, which made Daniel feel like a teenager in the best possible way. He sat in the dark living room for a long time after, phone in his hand, the house quiet around him. This was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. Opening himself up to possibility meant opening himself up to disappointment, and he'd had enough of that to last a lifetime. But Claire was different. Claire was a memory made real, a promise kept by accident, a door he'd thought was closed forever suddenly standing open. The week crawled by. Daniel buried himself in work, pushing through the project deadline with the kind of focused intensity that made his coworkers give him a wide berth. Emily had a rough day on Tuesday, came home from school crying because a boy had teased her about her handwriting, and Daniel spent the evening reassuring her that she was perfect, and the boy was an idiot, and also did she want to practice writing together? He and Claire texted constantly. Good morning messages with coffee cup emojis, photos of their respective lunches with commentary on the cafeteria versus packed options. Claire sent him a video of a dog wearing a sweater with the caption, "Emergency cute content for your Wednesday." Daniel sent back a picture of Emily's latest art project, a watercolor that was mostly enthusiastic purple blobs. Claire: I love it. She's got a good eye for color. Daniel: she's got enthusiasm. Not sure about the eye. Claire: enthusiasm is more important. You can teach technique. You can't teach giving a damn. On Thursday evening, after soccer practice, Emily asked again about Claire. Are you still texting her? Daniel looked up from the chicken he was attempting to cook without burning. Yeah, we're still in touch. When do I get to meet her? I don't know yet, sweetheart. We're taking it slow. That's boring. Sometimes boring is smart. Emily made a face that suggested she disagreed but was too tired to argue. She'd been running drills for 90 minutes, and her hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat, her cheeks flushed pink. Daniel's heart squeezed at the sight of her, his whole world in cleats and shin guards. Hey, Em? Yeah? You know you're my priority, right? You come first, always. Emily rolled her eyes in the way she'd started doing recently, this new 8 going on 15 thing she'd picked up. I know, Daddy. You tell me like every day. Just making sure. Can I watch TV while you finish dinner? Half an hour. She skipped off, and Daniel returned to the chicken, which was now definitely burning. His phone buzzed. Claire: how's your Thursday? Daniel: currently ruining dinner. You? Claire: stuck in a meeting that should have been an email. Save me. Daniel: what if I told you I was setting off the smoke alarm? Claire: is that a metaphor, or are you actually burning something? Daniel: literally burning chicken as we speak. Claire: stop texting me and save dinner. He laughed and rescued the chicken, which was salvageable if slightly more charred than intended. Emily ate it without complaint, told him about soccer practice and how she'd almost scored a goal, but the goalie had made an amazing save, Daddy, like you wouldn't believe, and then asked if she could have ice cream for dessert. You had ice cream yesterday. That was yesterday. This is today. Where have I heard that logic before? Emily grinned at him, gap-toothed and triumphant. So is that a yes? Small bowl. She cheered like he'd just given her the moon, and Daniel wondered, not for the first time, how he'd gotten so lucky with this kid. Even on the hard days, even when she drove him crazy, even when he had no idea what he was doing, she made everything worth it. Friday arrived with the kind of nervous anticipation Daniel hadn't felt in years. He dropped Emily at his mother's house after school, endured the usual 20 questions about whether he was eating enough and sleeping enough, and had he met anyone nice lately. Actually, Daniel said, because his mother would find out eventually, and it was better coming from him, I'm seeing someone tonight. Just dinner, nothing serious. His mother's face lit up like Christmas. Daniel, that's wonderful. What's her name? Where did you meet her? Is she... Mom, it's just a second date. Don't start planning the wedding. I'm not planning anything. I'm just happy you're putting yourself out there. She hugged him tight, smelling like the vanilla perfume she'd worn for 40 years. You deserve good things, sweetheart. Don't forget that. Emily hugged him goodbye, whispered, "Have fun with Claire," in his ear, because apparently his daughter was a mind reader now, and Daniel drove home to change and panic about what to wear. He settled on jeans and a button-down that Claire had never seen, checked his reflection 3 times, felt ridiculous for checking his reflection at all, and arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early because apparently he was incapable of being fashionably late. Claire was already there. She was sitting on a bench outside the restaurant, a Thai place that Marcus had recommended, casual and loud and nothing like Marcello's, wearing jeans and a green sweater that made her eyes impossible to look away from. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders, and when she saw him, she stood up with a smile that made Daniel forget how to breathe properly. "Hi," she said. "Hi." He stopped a foot away from her, suddenly unsure of the protocol. Did they hug? Shake hands? Stand awkwardly? Claire solved the problem by stepping forward and hugging him, quick and warm and smelling like something citrus and clean. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too. Sorry I'm early." "I'm earlier. Does that make me more eager or just worse at time management?" "Both?" "Fair." They went inside, were seated at a small table near the window, ordered Thai iced tea and pad Thai and spring rolls because neither of them could decide, and sharing seemed like a good compromise. The restaurant was busy, filled with the noise of conversation and clattering dishes and pop music playing just a little too loud, and Daniel found he was grateful for it. The noise made things easier somehow, less intense than the quiet intimacy of Marcello's. "So," Claire said once their drinks arrived, "tell me about your week, and don't leave out the chicken fire." It wasn't a fire. It was smoke. Contained smoke. Still counts. Daniel told her about work, about the project that had finally come together Wednesday night after he had stayed late debugging code that should have worked but didn't. He told her about Emily's soccer practice, about the almost goal in the ice cream negotiation. "She sounds amazing," Claire said. "Scary smart. Wonder where she gets that." "Definitely not from me. I once tried to assemble a bookshelf and ended up with extra screws and a shelf that leaned 15 degrees to the left." "Did you keep it?" "For 3 years. Finally collapsed during a particularly aggressive round of Emily playing The Floor is Lava." Claire laughed, and the sound made something warm bloom in Daniel's chest. This was easy. This was talking to someone who actually listened, who asked follow-up questions, who made him feel like his stories about domestic disasters were actually interesting. The food arrived and they ate and talked, the conversation flowing between memories and present-day observations. Claire told him about a client meeting where she'd had to convince a CEO that Comic Sans was not an appropriate font for a luxury brand, no matter how friendly it looked. "Did you win?" "Barely. I showed him examples of other luxury brands and he finally caved, but I think he still emails his team in Comic Sans just to spite me." "That's commitment to a terrible font. He's committed to many terrible things. It's a whole personality." They shared the pad Thai, their chopsticks occasionally colliding, and Daniel couldn't remember the last time he'd been on a date that felt this normal, this good, like something that could actually work instead of just being a thing to get through. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said, setting down her chopsticks. "Sure." "What are you hoping for here? I don't mean like long-term plans or anything heavy, just what does this look like to you? What are you comfortable with?" Daniel appreciated the directness. "Honestly, I don't know. I haven't done this in so long that I don't even know what the rules are anymore. But I like talking to you. I like being around you. I'd like to keep doing that if you're interested." "I'm very interested. But I need slow. I need to make sure Emily's okay with everything. I need to be sure that that you're sure. Because if you're not, if this is just nostalgia or curiosity or..." "Daniel!" Claire reached across the table, her hand covering his. "I'm sure. I'm not here because I'm chasing some childhood fantasy. I'm here because adult me really likes adult you. The man who burns chicken and braids hair and shows up for his kid every single day. That's who I'm interested in." His throat went tight. "Okay." Okay? Okay. Slow. Together. We'll figure it out. Claire smiled, squeezed his hand, and went back to her food like she hadn't just said the exact right thing at the exact right time. After dinner, they walked through the downtown area, the November cold biting but not unbearable, their breath clouding in the air. The streets were decorated for the upcoming holidays, lights strung between lampposts, shop windows displaying their wares. It felt festive and alive, and Daniel felt something loosen in his chest, some tightness he'd been carrying for so long he'd stopped noticing it was there. "Emily wanted to meet you," he said as they paused outside a bookstore, looking at the display of new releases. "Yeah?" Claire turned to him, eyes bright. "What did you tell her?" "That we're taking it slow, that I wouldn't introduce her to anyone who wasn't important." He paused. "She has a donut test, apparently." "I'm honored. What does it entail?" "I think just eating donuts and not being terrible. The bar is low. I can clear that bar." They walked more, ending up at a small park with a fountain that was turned off for the winter, benches arranged in a circle around the empty basin. Claire sat down and Daniel joined her, their shoulders touching, their breath visible in the cold air. "I broke up with Nathan, my ex-fiancé, because I realized I was settling," Claire said quietly. "Everyone thought he was perfect. My mom loved him. My friends loved him. He had a good job and a nice apartment, and he wanted kids someday, and he checked every box on the list of things I was supposed to want." She looked down at her hands. "But when I imagined marrying him, all I felt was resignation, like I was agreeing to a life sentence instead of choosing a partner. That's awful. It was necessary, but it made me wonder if something was wrong with me, like maybe I was too picky or too damaged or just fundamentally incapable of being satisfied." She glanced at him. "And then I met you again, or re-met, and I felt something I hadn't felt with him in 3 years together." "What did you feel?" "Excited, nervous, curious, alive." She smiled slightly. "All the things you're supposed to feel when you're starting something new. And it made me realize that settling isn't safe. It's just slow death by comfort." Daniel understood completely. He'd settled for Sarah, in a way. Had loved her, yes, but had also been young and uncertain and willing to accept someone who wanted him, even if they didn't really understand him. The leaving had hurt, but the years before, those had hurt too, in quieter ways he'd pretended not to notice. "I don't want to settle either," he said. "Not anymore. Life's too short and Emily's watching, learning what relationships should look like from whatever I model for her. I want her to see something real." "No pressure then?" "None at all." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the occasional car drive past, the lights from the shops casting colored shadows on the empty fountain. Daniel's phone buzzed. His mother, sending a picture of Emily covered in cookie dough, the caption reading, "We're having a great time." He showed it to Claire, who laughed and said Emily looked like she was having the best evening ever. "She's with my mom for the whole weekend," Daniel said. "First time in months I've had 2 days to myself." "What do you usually do with free time?" "Laundry, meal prep, exciting stuff," he paused. "Tomorrow I was planning to actually sleep past 6 a.m., which feels revolutionary." "That's sad, Daniel." "That's parenthood." "Well, if you want company for your sad meal prep, I'm available." Claire said it casually, but he caught the hope underneath. "Or if you want your space, that's fine too. I don't want to monopolize your one kid-free weekend." Daniel thought about it. Thought about his empty house, his meal prep and laundry, the quiet that used to feel peaceful, but lately just felt lonely. Thought about Claire in his kitchen, talking while he cooked, making the space feel less like a shrine to routine and more like a home. "Come over tomorrow," he said. "I'll make lunch. You can judge my cooking skills in person." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." They stayed at the park until the cold became too much, then walked back to their cars, the evening winding down in that reluctant way good dates do. At Claire's car, she turned to him, and this time he didn't hesitate. He hugged her properly, feeling her arms around him, her chin on his shoulder, the perfect fit of it making something click into place. "Thank you for tonight," she said into his jacket. "Thank you for being patient with me, with all of this." She pulled back to look at him. "It's not patience, Daniel. It's respect. You're worth waiting for. Then she kissed him, soft and brief, and tasting like Thai iced tea. And before he could fully process that it was happening, it was over. She climbed into her car with a smile, waved through the window, and drove away. Daniel stood in the parking lot, his hand pressed to his lips, feeling like every rom-com cliché and not caring even a little bit. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Well? Daniel. She kissed me. Marcus. Finally. Details. Now. Daniel. Tomorrow. Too busy floating. He drove home in a daze, the radio playing love songs that suddenly seemed relevant, the future stretching out in front of him with possibility instead of just obligation. This was dangerous, yes. This could hurt, absolutely, but it could also be extraordinary. And Daniel was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, extraordinary was worth the risk. Saturday morning arrived with sunlight streaming through Daniel's bedroom window, the kind of bright November day that felt like a gift. He woke naturally at 7:15, late by his standards, and lay in bed for a moment, just appreciating the silence. No small feet padding down the hallway, no cartoons blaring from the living room, no negotiations about breakfast or what outfit was appropriate for the weather. Just quiet. He should have savored it. Instead, he found himself checking his phone, smiling at the good morning text from Claire that had arrived 20 minutes earlier, complete with a photo of her coffee cup and the caption caffeinating in preparation for judging your cooking. Daniel. Brave of you to give me advance warning. I could poison the food. Claire. You wouldn't. You're too nice. Daniel. You don't know that. Maybe I'm secretly terrible. Claire. You kept a childhood promise in a cookie tin for 23 years. You're not secretly anything, except maybe a romantic. He stared at that message for a long moment, something warm unfurling in his chest. A romantic. Was he? He'd never thought of himself that way. Practical, yes. Responsible, absolutely. But romantic felt like a word for other people. People who weren't buried under the weight of single parenthood and mortgage payments and the constant low-grade anxiety of trying not to screw up the one thing that mattered most. But maybe Claire was right. Maybe keeping that promise, that ridiculous childhood contract written in marker, maybe that meant something about who he was underneath all the responsibility. He got up, showered, and spent an embarrassing amount of time cleaning the house. It wasn't dirty exactly. He kept things relatively tidy because Emily had a talent for finding any object left on the floor and tripping over it. But there was a difference between clean enough for daily life and clean enough for someone you were trying to impress. He vacuumed, wiped down counters, hid the stack of Emily's art projects that had accumulated on the dining room table, and arranged the throw pillows on the couch with more care than they'd ever received. Marcus called at 10. So, he said, voice heavy with implication, I heard there was kissing. Jenna told you. Claire told Jenna, who told me, because we're all 12 years old, apparently. Daniel could hear the grin in his friend's voice. I'm going to need details, extensive details. What kind of kiss? First date kiss or, I've been waiting 23 years for this kiss. I'm not having this conversation with you. You absolutely are. I set you up. I deserve credit. You set me up by accident. You didn't even know we knew each other. I had a feeling, a cosmic sense that you two would click. Marcus paused. Okay, I had no idea, but I'm still taking credit. So? How was it? Daniel leaned against the kitchen counter, unable to stop the smile spreading across his face. It was good, Marcus. Really good. And she's coming over today? For lunch. Lunch. Very domestic. Very coupley. Marcus's tone shifted, became more serious. You okay with this? I mean, really okay. Because I know Sarah messed you up pretty bad, and I don't want... I'm okay, Daniel interrupted, surprised to find he meant it. I'm nervous as hell and probably overthinking everything, but I'm okay. Claire's different. Different how? Daniel tried to put it into words. She doesn't need me to be anything except what I am. She knows about Emily, knows about the mess, knows I'm not some exciting bachelor with a flexible schedule and disposable income, and she's still here. That's because you're a catch, Danny. You're just too stubborn to see it. They talked for a few more minutes before Marcus had to go, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts and his increasingly anxious checking of the clock. Claire was due at noon. He had 2 hours. He could cook something impressive in 2 hours, right? He settled on pasta, homemade sauce, nothing fancy but solid. He'd made it 100 times for Emily, could do it in his sleep. While the sauce simmered, he set the table, second-guessed his choice of plates, changed them out for the nicer set his mother had given him that he never used, then changed them back because the nice ones felt like he was trying too hard. At 11:50, his doorbell rang. Daniel checked his reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. Ridiculous. She'd already seen him, already kissed him, and opened the door. Claire stood on his porch in jeans and a burgundy sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, holding a bottle of wine and a bouquet of sunflowers that made his throat tight for reasons he couldn't quite name. "Hi," she said, suddenly looking as nervous as he felt. "I know you said just lunch, but I couldn't show up empty-handed. And I remember you said your dad liked sunflowers. From the treehouse, there were sunflowers growing near it, and I thought maybe you still—" She stopped, laughed at herself. "I'm babbling. Sorry. Here." She thrust the flowers and wine at him, and Daniel took them carefully, touched beyond measure that she'd remembered that detail from a childhood he'd half forgotten himself. "Come in," he managed. "And you're not babbling. I love them. Thank you." Claire stepped inside, looking around with open curiosity. The house was small but well kept, decorated in a style that could generously be called functional. Family photos on the walls, Emily's artwork held to the fridge with magnets, a living room that showed clear signs of being lived in by a child, scattered crayons, a forgotten stuffed animal on the couch, a bookshelf overflowing with a combination of chapter books and technical manuals. "This is nice," Claire said, and she sounded like she meant it. "It feels like a home. It's a mess. It's lived in. There's a difference." She pointed to a photo on the wall, Daniel and Emily at the beach last summer, both of them sunburned and grinning, sand in their hair. "Look at you two. You look so happy." "That was a good day." She found a starfish and refused to leave until we'd explored every tide pool within a mile radius. Sounds like her dad. You were like that with bugs, remember? You'd spend recess looking under rocks for beetles. You remember that? Claire turned to him, eyes soft. "Daniel, I remember everything about you. That's what I've been trying to tell you." The moment stretched between them, charged and tender, and Daniel felt the world narrow to just this. Claire in his living room, sunlight through the windows, the smell of tomato sauce from the kitchen, the impossible reality that she was here and she remembered and she'd brought sunflowers. "I should put these in water," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "And check on lunch before I burn it again?" Claire followed him to the kitchen, hopped up on the counter while he found a vase for the flowers and stirred the sauce. She talked about her morning, a run that had been more of a slow jog, a phone call with a friend from Portland, the decision to wear the burgundy sweater because green felt too obvious given what he'd said about her eyes. "You overthought your outfit too?" Daniel asked. "I changed 3 times. This is pathetic. We're adults. Adults who haven't done this in a while." Fair point. He set the sunflowers on the kitchen table. They looked perfect there, bright and cheerful against the worn wood, and served lunch. The pasta was actually good, the sauce having achieved that perfect balance of garlic and basil and tomato that usually eluded him. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic, and Daniel kept having to remind himself that this was real, this was happening. This woman who'd once been his best friend was sitting at his kitchen table looking at him like he was someone worth knowing. After lunch, Claire insisted on helping with dishes despite his protests. They stood side by side at the sink, her washing and him drying, and the domesticity of it made Daniel's chest ache in the best way. "Can I see it?" Claire asked suddenly. "The treehouse? Or what's left of it?" Daniel hadn't been to the treehouse in years, hadn't even thought about it, really, except in the context of that promise. Now, with Claire asking, the memory came flooding back. Endless summer afternoons, the world spread out below them, the particular smell of old wood and leaves and childhood certainty. "I don't know if it's still standing," he warned. "It's been over 20 years. Only one way to find out." They bundled into coats and headed to the backyard, through the gate, and past the garden his father had planted that Daniel kept alive more out of stubbornness than skill. The oak tree stood at the far corner of the property, massive and ancient, its branches bare against the November sky. And there, nestled in the lower branches, was the treehouse. It was smaller than Daniel remembered, everything from childhood was, and clearly showing its age. The wood was weathered gray, some boards warped from years of rain and snow, but it was intact, still clinging to its perch like a monument to simpler times. "Oh my God," Claire breathed. "It's still here." "Barely. I wouldn't trust it to hold weight." But Claire was already climbing, using the ladder rungs that were probably rotted through, pulling herself up with a determination that made Daniel's heart leap into his throat. "Claire, be careful. I'm fine. Come up here." Daniel hesitated, then followed, testing each rung before putting his full weight on it, convinced the whole structure would collapse, and they'd both end up in the hospital explaining to doctors how they'd been reliving childhood memories like idiots. But the treehouse held. Inside was smaller than Daniel's bathroom, the ceiling low enough that they had to duck their heads. Someone, probably his father, had cleared out the old debris, but the essence remained. The small window facing the yard, the initials carved in the far corner, barely visible now, but still there if you knew where to look. The sense of being suspended between earth and sky, in a space that belonged only to them. Claire sat down carefully, her back against the wall, and Daniel joined her. Their shoulders pressed together in the cramped space, their breath visible in the cold air that leaked through gaps in the wood. "I can't believe this is still here," Claire said softly. "I thought for sure it would be gone. My dad maintained it for years. After you moved, I think he hoped I'd use it, bring friends up here or whatever." Daniel smiled at the memory. "I came up here once in high school when I was mad at my mom. Sat here for 2 hours just thinking." "What were you thinking about?" "I honestly can't remember. Probably something dramatic. Everything feels dramatic at 16. Claire laughed, then reached out and traced the carved initials, DH plus CM in a lopsided heart, carved with all the skill of a 7-year-old wielding a pocket knife he wasn't supposed to have. "You got in so much trouble for this," she said. "Worth it." "Was it?" Daniel looked at her, at the way the light through the small window caught in her hair, at the smile playing at the corners of her mouth, at the impossible fact of her presence here in this space where they'd once promised each other forever with the absolute certainty of children who didn't understand what forever meant. "Yeah," he said. "It was." Claire turned to face him fully, and the treehouse suddenly felt even smaller, the air between them charged with something Daniel didn't have words for. "Daniel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you promised to marry me when we were 7 years old." There it was. The thing they'd been dancing around since that first night at Marcello's. The promise that had seemed like a game then, but now hung in the air between them like a question that demanded an answer. "I did," Daniel said, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Do you remember what we said? The exact words?" He did. God help him, he did. "We said that if we weren't married to other people by the time we were 30, we'd marry each other, because we were best friends, and best friends should end up together." "We were so sure," Claire said, and her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "So absolutely certain that we'd figured out the secret to happiness. Just marry your best friend. Simple. We were 7, everything was simple. And now we're 33, and nothing is simple." She reached for his hand, laced their fingers together. "But Daniel, I look at you and I feel the same thing I felt then. Like you're someone safe. Someone who sees me and doesn't need me to be different or better or more. Just me." Daniel's throat was too tight to speak. He squeezed her hand, hoping she could feel everything he couldn't say, all the fear and hope and desperate wanting that had been building since that first moment of recognition at the restaurant. "I'm terrified," Claire continued, the words spilling out now like she'd been holding them back. "I'm terrified because I walked away from someone perfect, and everyone thought I was crazy, and now I'm sitting in a treehouse with someone from my past and feeling more right than I've felt in years. And what if I'm wrong again? What if this is just nostalgia and we're both desperate and—" "Claire," Daniel cupped her face with his free hand, making her look at him. "I'm terrified too. I'm terrified because the last time I let someone in, she left. She looked at our daughter and decided it wasn't enough. Decided we weren't enough. And I swore I'd never put Emily through that again. Never put myself through that again. Then why are you here? Because you're not Sarah, you're not Nathan, you're Claire. He brushed his thumb across her cheekbone, felt her lean into his touch. And maybe we are crazy. Maybe this is the worst idea two people ever had. But I haven't felt this alive in 6 years, and I think that has to mean something. Claire's eyes searched his face, looking for something. Reassurance, certainty, proof that this impossible thing could actually work. What if we screw this up? We probably will. At least a little. That's what people do. What if I'm not good with Emily? What if she hates me? She won't hate you. She's already curious about you, which is basically her version of approval. What if your ex comes back? The question hit like cold water. Daniel pulled back slightly, confused. Sarah? Why would... I don't know, but people do that sometimes, right? They leave and then they come back and everything gets complicated. Claire was twisting her hands now, nervous energy radiating off her. And you have a daughter with her. That's a connection that doesn't just go away. Daniel understood the fear beneath the question. She'd been left too, in her own way. By her fiancé who'd checked all the boxes but couldn't check the one that mattered. By her parents who'd chosen their own drama over their children. By everyone who should have stayed and didn't. Sarah hasn't been back in 4 years, he said carefully. The last time she visited, she stayed for 2 hours and spent most of it on her phone. She sends birthday cards and the occasional child support check when she remembers. That's it. That's the extent of her involvement. But if she did come back, she won't. And if she did, it wouldn't matter. Not in the way you're worried about. Daniel took both of Claire's hands in his. I'm not in love with Sarah. I'm not pining for her return. I'm grateful she gave me Emily. And I'm grateful she had the self-awareness to leave instead of staying and making everyone miserable. But that chapter is closed. You're sure? I'm sure about a lot of things lately. I'm sure that you make me laugh. I'm sure that I think about you constantly in a way that's probably not healthy. I'm sure that sitting in this ridiculous treehouse with you feels more right than anything has in years. He paused, made himself say the rest. I'm sure that I'm falling for you, Claire, and that terrifies me more than anything else. The words hung in the cold air between them, impossible to take back. Claire stared at him, her lips parted, her eyes wide and shining. You're falling for me, she repeated, like she needed to hear it again to believe it. Yeah, I am. We've been on 2 dates. I know. This is insane. I know that too, Claire laughed, and it came out watery and slightly hysterical. I'm falling for you too. I didn't want to say it because I thought it was too fast and too much, and you'd think I was crazy, but I am. I'm falling so hard it's terrifying. Daniel felt something break open in his chest. Some lock he'd put on his heart after Sarah left. Some protection he'd built that was suddenly, catastrophically failing, and instead of feeling exposed, he felt free. So what do we do? He asked. I have no idea. This wasn't in the relationship handbook. There's a handbook? There should be. Chapter 1. Don't fall for someone on the second date. Chapter 2. Definitely don't confess your feelings in a childhood treehouse. Chapter 3. Daniel kissed her. He kissed her like he'd wanted to since the parking lot, like he'd wanted to maybe since they were 7 and he didn't understand what wanting meant. He kissed her with all the fear and hope and desperate certainty that this was either the best decision or the worst decision, but it was his decision, and he was choosing it, choosing her, choosing the terrifying possibility of something real. Claire kissed him back like she was drowning and he was air, her hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer in the cramped space until they were pressed together with nowhere to go and no desire to go anywhere anyway. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. Okay, he said. Okay, what? Okay, we're doing this. We're falling for each other at a completely inappropriate speed and we're going to figure it out as we go, and it's probably going to be messy, but we're doing it anyway. That's not much of a plan. It's the only plan I've got. Claire smiled, and it was tremulous and hopeful and the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. Then I guess we're doing this. They climbed down from the treehouse carefully, both of them quiet with the weight of what had just happened. The backyard looked the same as it had 30 minutes ago, but everything felt different, sharper, more real. Like the world had been out of focus and had suddenly snapped into clarity. Back inside, they settled on the couch with coffee, sitting closer than necessary, Claire's feet tucked under Daniel's thigh. They talked about logistics, how to navigate this when he had Emily, what Claire's work schedule looked like, how to introduce the idea of a relationship to an 8-year-old who was brilliant and perceptive and would absolutely see through any attempt to hide it. "I want to meet her," Claire said. "When you're ready, when she's ready. I want to do this right." "She wants to meet you too. She's been asking about you all week." "Really?" "Really. She has questions, lots of questions. She's very thorough." "I can handle questions." "She'll want to know your favorite color, your favorite food, if you like soccer, if you're nice to me, and probably a dozen other things I can't predict." Daniel smiled. "She's protective." "Good. She should be. You're worth protecting." The afternoon faded into evening without either of them noticing. They ordered pizza because cooking again seemed like too much effort, ate it straight from the box while watching a movie neither of them paid attention to. Claire fit against his side like she'd been designed for the space, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, the whole thing so perfectly domestic, it made Daniel's heart ache. When his phone buzzed with a text from his mother, a photo of Emily giving a thumbs up with the caption, "Requested to stay another night." "That okay?" Daniel showed it to Claire. "Say yes," Claire said. "If you want to, I mean. No pressure." Daniel wanted to. God, he wanted to keep this bubble intact just a little longer, live in this space where it was just the two of them figuring things out without the weight of the real world pressing in. He texted back, "That's fine. Tell her I love her." His mother responded immediately. "She knows. Have fun." "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." Claire read the message over his shoulder and laughed. "Your mom sounds fun. She's going to love you." "You can't know that." "I know my mother. She's been waiting 6 years for me to date someone. She'll probably plan the wedding before we finish introductions." No pressure at all. They talked until midnight, curled together on the couch, sharing stories and fears and half-formed dreams about what this could become. Claire told him about wanting to open her own design firm someday, about the fear that she wasn't good enough or brave enough to take that leap. Daniel told her about the cabin he'd always wanted to build in the mountains, about teaching Emily to fish and hike and appreciate the quiet of the woods. "We could do that," Claire said sleepily. "Build a cabin, take Emily hiking, make s'mores and tell terrible ghost stories. We've been on 2 dates, and we're already planning a cabin. We're either really good at this or really bad at it. I'm voting for really good." When Claire finally left, reluctantly, with multiple kisses at the door and promises to text when she got home, Daniel stood on his porch watching her taillights disappear, feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff and discovered he could fly. His phone buzzed. "Claire. Made it home. Missing you already." Daniel. "Same. Today was..." He paused, trying to find words big enough. Daniel. "Today was everything." Claire. "It was. Sleep well, Daniel Hayes." Daniel. "You too, Claire Monroe." He went inside, cleaned up the pizza boxes and coffee cups, straightened the couch cushions that still held the impression of where they'd been sitting. The house felt different now, less like a shrine to routine and more like a home that was opening up, making room for something new. In his bedroom, Daniel lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. This was happening. This was real. He was falling for someone, and she was falling back, and it was terrifying and wonderful and completely insane. His phone buzzed one more time. Claire. "One more thing." Daniel. "Yeah?" Claire. "I know we're taking it slow. I know we're being careful. But I need you to know, I'm all in. Whatever this is, wherever it goes, I'm choosing it. I'm choosing you." Daniel's vision blurred. He typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on the truth. Daniel. "I'm all in too. From the moment I saw you at that restaurant, I've been all in. I was just too scared to admit it." Claire. "Not scared anymore?" Daniel. "Still terrified, but doing it anyway." Claire. "That's the bravest kind of choice." Daniel. "Or the stupidest." Claire. "Can it be both?" Daniel. Yeah, it can be both. They said goodnight again, and this time Daniel let himself believe it. Let himself believe that this impossible thing could actually work. That the promise he'd made at 7 could somehow be kept at 33, not because of destiny or fate or cosmic coincidence, but because two people who'd found each other once had found each other again and were choosing, every day, to stay found. He fell asleep with his phone in his hand and a smile on his face, dreaming of tree houses and sunflowers and the impossible mathematics of second chances. Sunday morning brought Emily home with stories that tumbled out faster than Daniel could process them. Something about cookies and a movie marathon and Grandma letting her stay up past bedtime, which was apparently the greatest transgression and triumph combined. She was still talking when she paused mid-sentence, tilted her head, and studied Daniel with the unnerving focus she sometimes employed. "You look different," she announced. Daniel, who'd been making scrambled eggs while trying not to smile at his phone every 30 seconds, glanced up. "Different how?" "Happy different. Like when I bring home a good grade." Emily climbed onto her usual bar stool, chin propped in her hands. "Did something good happen?" "Maybe." "Was it Claire?" Daniel flipped the eggs, buying himself time. He'd known this conversation was coming, had even rehearsed versions of it in his head, but actually having it was different. Emily deserved honesty. She also deserved protection from disappointment, and Daniel wasn't sure how to balance both. "Yeah," he said finally. "It was Claire." "I knew it!" Emily's face lit up. "You're dating her for real now? We're seeing where it goes, taking it slow. That's what you said last week. You're still saying slow. That means it's going good, right?" The logic was sound, even if delivered by an 8-year-old. Daniel plated the eggs, set them in front of her with toast. "It's going good. But Emily, I need you to understand something. Claire and I are still getting to know each other. We're not rushing into anything, and you're the most important person in my life, always. That doesn't change no matter what happens with Claire." Emily took a bite of eggs, chewed thoughtfully. "Does she want to meet me?" "She does, very much. But only when you're ready." "I'm ready now." Daddy, I've been ready since you first told me about her. You're the one who's slow." She said it matter-of-factly, without accusation, and Daniel felt his heart squeeze at how grown-up she sounded. "I'm not a baby. I know what dating is, and I know you're scared because of Mom." The words hit harder than they should have. Daniel set down his own plate, sat down next to her. "What do you know about Mom?" Emily shrugged, suddenly looking very 8 again. "That she left because she didn't want to be a mom anymore. That it made you sad. That you don't like to talk about it." "Did someone tell you that?" "No, I just figured it out. I'm smart, remember?" She picked at her toast. "I used to think maybe it was my fault. That I did something wrong, and that's why she left." Daniel's heart broke clean in half. Look at me." He waited until she did, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Your mom leaving had nothing to do with you. Nothing. You are perfect and wonderful and the best thing that ever happened to me. She left because she wasn't ready to be a parent. That's on her, not you. Do you understand?" Emily nodded, but a tear escaped anyway. Daniel pulled her into his lap like he used to when she was smaller, held her while she cried quietly into his shirt. These moments were getting rarer. She was growing up, becoming more independent, and sometimes Daniel mourned the little girl who'd needed him for everything. But she still needed him for this. For the reassurance that she was loved, that she was enough, that her mother's abandonment wasn't a reflection of her worth. "I don't want you to be sad anymore," Emily said into his chest. "I want you to be happy like you were this morning. Claire makes you happy." "She does. But you make me happy too. Different happy, but just as important." "Can it be both? Can you be happy with me and with Claire?" "I think so. If we do it right." Emily pulled back, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Then let's do it right. Can she come to dinner this week? I want to meet her and do the donut test and see if she's good enough for you." Daniel couldn't help but smile. "You're very protective. You're my dad. Someone has to make sure people are nice to you." She said it so seriously that Daniel had to swallow against the lump in his throat. "Okay, I'll ask her. But you have to promise me something. If you meet Claire and you don't like her, or if things feel weird or uncomfortable, you tell me. Your feelings matter more than anything. Deal?" "Deal. but I'm probably going to like her. Yeah? Why's that? Because you like her, and you have good taste. You picked me, didn't you? The logic was circular and perfect, and Daniel hugged her again just because he could. That evening, after Emily was in bed with her chapter book and her nightlight, Daniel called Claire. He'd texted her throughout the day with updates, Emily's return, the conversation, the dinner invitation, but hearing her voice felt necessary. She wants to meet me? Claire sounded nervous and pleased in equal measure. Already? She's been ready since I first mentioned you. I'm the one who's been slow. No, you've been careful. There's a difference. He heard rustling like she was settling into a chair. Daniel, I want to meet her, but I also don't want to push. If you think it's too soon, I don't think it's too soon. I think it's terrifying and probably too fast by conventional standards. But I also think Emily deserves to be part of this conversation. She's going to be affected by whatever happens between us. Might as well let her have a say. Okay, when? Wednesday? I could make dinner. Something simple, very low pressure. Wednesday's perfect. What does she like to eat? Anything except mushrooms and fish. She's weirdly adventurous for an 8-year-old. It takes after her dad. I'm not adventurous. I'm terrified of everything. You climbed into a treehouse that should have been condemned. You're letting someone into your daughter's life. You're falling for someone you met 3 weeks ago. Claire's voice went soft. You're braver than you think, Daniel Hayes. They talked for another hour, making plans and second-guessing plans and laughing at their own anxiety. By the time they hung up, Daniel felt steadier. This was happening. This was real. And maybe it would all fall apart, but maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would be exactly what they both needed. Wednesday arrived with the kind of nervous energy usually reserved for job interviews or root canals. Daniel changed his shirt twice, cleaned the kitchen 3 times, and made Emily promise to be herself, but also maybe not tell every single story she knew in the first 5 minutes. I'm always myself, Emily said, offended, and my stories are interesting. Your stories are very interesting. I'm just saying maybe pace yourself. You're weird when you're nervous. I'm not nervous. You cleaned the bathroom twice. You never cleaned the bathroom twice. She had a point. Claire arrived at 6:30 with a bouquet of sunflowers for the table. Daniel's heart squeezed at the callback, and a box of chocolate donuts with elaborate sprinkles that made Emily's eyes go wide. You brought donuts, Emily breathed, looking at Claire like she'd just performed a miracle. I heard there might be a test, Claire said, kneeling down to Emily's eye level. I wanted to make sure I passed. I'm Claire. I know who you are. My dad talks about you all the time. Emily accepted the donuts solemnly. These are perfect. You passed. Just like that? Just like that. Donuts don't lie. Claire laughed, and the sound seemed to break some of the tension. She stood, caught Daniel's eye, and he saw his own nervousness reflected back. They were both trying so hard, both terrified of screwing this up, and somehow that made it easier. Dinner was spaghetti and meatballs, Emily's request, and it went better than Daniel had dared hope. Emily interrogated Claire with the thoroughness of a prosecutor, asking about her job and her favorite color, and whether she liked soccer, and did she have any pets, and what was her position on bedtimes. I think bedtimes are important, Claire said seriously, but I also think exceptions can be made for special occasions. What kind of special occasions? Good report cards, birthdays, Fridays when you've had a really long week and you just need to stay up and watch one more episode. Emily nodded approvingly. That's fair. My dad is very strict about bedtime usually. I'm not strict. I'm consistent. Same thing. Claire grinned at Daniel over Emily's head, and he felt something settle in his chest. This was good. This was working. Emily was being herself, chatty and curious and occasionally blunt, and Claire was meeting her there, not talking down or trying too hard, just being present. After dinner, Emily insisted on showing Claire her room, which Daniel knew was the real test. Emily's room was her sanctuary, decorated with her artwork and soccer trophies and a collection of rocks she'd found on various adventures. She didn't bring just anyone into that space. Daniel cleaned up the kitchen, giving them space, listening to the murmur of their voices upstairs. He was loading the dishwasher when they came back down, Emily chattering about a drawing she'd made, and Claire asking thoughtful questions about technique and inspiration. Daddy, can Claire see the treehouse? Emily asked. Daniel glanced at Claire, who looked slightly panicked. They hadn't told Emily about the treehouse significance, about the promise, or the childhood connection. As far as Emily knew, Claire was just someone her dad was dating. It's pretty cold out, Daniel said carefully. But she should see it. You said it was important when you were little. She should see important things. The logic was airtight. Daniel looked at Claire, who nodded. They bundled into coats and went outside, Emily leading the way with a flashlight, chattering about how she sometimes used the treehouse for reading when the weather was nice. The structure loomed in the darkness, looking even more precarious than Daniel remembered. It's smaller than I thought, Emily said, shining the flashlight up into the branches. But it's cool. Did you really carve your initials in there? Daniel had forgotten he'd mentioned that detail. Yeah, when I was about your age. Can I see? Before Daniel could respond, Emily was climbing, her movements confident and quick. Claire watched with obvious concern, and Daniel put a hand on her arm. She's done this 100 times. She's fine. She's braver than both of us. Definitely. Emily's voice drifted down from the treehouse. I found them. DH plus CM in a heart. That's so cute. Claire, you have to come up and see. Claire looked at Daniel, eyebrows raised. He shrugged, and they climbed up together, squeezing into the small space where Emily was tracing the carved letters with her finger. You must have really liked each other, Emily said. We were best friends, Claire said softly, a long time ago. And now you're dating my dad. That's like a movie. Emily looked between them, her expression thoughtful. Is that why you came back? Because of the promise? Daniel's heart stopped. What promise? The one in the cookie tin. I found it when I was looking for crayons in the garage. Emily said it matter-of-factly, like she hadn't just detonated a bomb. You promised to marry each other if you weren't married to other people by the time you were 30. That's really romantic. Claire's hand found Daniel's in the darkness. You read the promise? I read everything. I'm nosy. Grandma says I get it from Grandpa. Emily shined the flashlight on them, studying their faces. So are you going to keep the promise? You're both 33 now. That's past 30. Daniel couldn't breathe. This wasn't how this conversation was supposed to go. Emily wasn't supposed to know about the promise, wasn't supposed to connect these dots, wasn't supposed to ask the question that Daniel himself had been avoiding. He started, but Claire squeezed his hand. We're getting to know each other again, Claire said gently. The promise was made by kids who didn't understand how complicated grown-up life is. But your dad and I, we're figuring out if we work as adults, if we make each other happy, if we fit into each other's lives in a way that makes sense. Do you make each other happy? Yes, Claire said without hesitation. Very much. And do you fit? Claire looked at Daniel, and even in the dim light from Emily's flashlight, he could see everything in her eyes, hope and fear and something that looked a lot like love. We're working on it, Daniel said. But yeah, I think we do. Emily nodded, satisfied. Good, because I like Claire. She brought good donuts, and she asked questions about my drawings, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid. You should keep her. It's not quite that simple. Why not? You like her. She likes you. I like her. That's the important stuff, right? Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought. His 8-year-old daughter had just reduced the entire complicated mess of adult relationships to its essential truth. And she wasn't wrong. You're pretty smart, you know that, Claire said. Everyone says that. I think it's because I read a lot. Emily started climbing down. Can we have the donuts now? I think we earned them. Back inside, they sat at the kitchen table with donuts and milk. And Daniel watched Claire and Emily talk about everything and nothing, school and art and whether cats were better than dogs. Emily was warming up to Claire in a way that made Daniel's chest tight, and Claire was engaging with her like she actually enjoyed it, not like she was performing for Daniel's benefit. When Emily finally went upstairs to get ready for bed, Daniel walked Claire to the door. They stood in the hallway, neither wanting the evening to end. She's incredible, Claire said. Daniel, she's so smart and funny and completely herself. You've done an amazing job. I've done a terrified job, but thank you. She likes me. She loves you. She doesn't use the word keep lightly. Claire laughed, then sobered. The promise thing. I didn't know she'd found it. Are you okay with her knowing? I'm okay with everything about tonight. It went better than I could have hoped. He pulled Claire closer, his hands on her waist. Thank you for being perfect with her. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to be honest. Same thing. He kissed her softly, aware that Emily could come downstairs at any moment but unable to resist. Claire kissed him back, her hands fisted in his shirt, and when they pulled apart, they were both smiling. I should go, Claire said, making no move to actually leave. You should. Emily has school tomorrow. You have work. We do. So I'm going now. Okay. They kissed again and again until Emily's voice drifted down from upstairs. Claire, are you staying or going? I want to say goodnight properly. They broke apart laughing, and Claire called up, I'm going, but thank you for tonight, Emily. I had the best time. Me too. Come back soon. I will. Daniel walked Claire to her car, kissed her once more under the streetlight, and stood on his porch watching her drive away. Inside, Emily was waiting at the top of the stairs, her expression unreadable. So? Daniel asked. So what? What's the verdict? Emily came down slowly, stopped on the bottom step so they were eye level. I really like her, Daddy. She's not trying to be my mom or replace anyone. She's just Claire, and she makes you smile with your whole face, not just your mouth. That's very observant. I told you, I'm smart. She hugged him suddenly, fiercely. You can keep seeing her. You have my permission. Oh, I have your permission? Yep, but if she's mean to you, I'll fight her. Noted. They did their bedtime routine, teeth brushing and chapter book and tucking in, and when Daniel kissed Emily's forehead, she grabbed his hand. Daddy, do you think you'll marry her? For real? Not just because of the promise? Daniel sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. I don't know yet, Em. We're still figuring things out, but I really care about her. And I think maybe this could be something special. Good. You deserve something special. She yawned, her eyes already drooping. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. He turned off her light, left the door cracked the way she liked, and went downstairs to a house that felt fuller somehow. His phone buzzed. Claire. Thank you for tonight. Emily is extraordinary. I can see so much of you in her. Daniel. Thank you for being wonderful with her. She gave us her approval. Claire. She did? Really? Daniel. Really? She said I have permission to keep seeing you. Also that she'll fight you if you're mean to me. Claire. I love her already. Daniel stared at those 3 words, love her already, and felt the world shift slightly on its axis. This was real. This was happening. Claire wasn't just someone passing through, someone testing the waters. She was diving in, falling for his daughter, choosing this complicated, messy, beautiful life he'd built. Daniel. She loves you too, I can tell. Claire. And what about you? The question hung there on his screen, weighted with everything they hadn't quite said yet. Daniel thought about lies and half-truths, about protecting himself, about moving slow and being careful. Then he thought about Claire in his treehouse, Claire with Emily, Claire looking at him like he was something precious. Daniel. I'm getting there faster than I expected. Claire. Good. Because I'm already there. Daniel's breath caught. He read the message 3 times, making sure he wasn't misinterpreting, wasn't seeing what he wanted to see instead of what was actually there. Daniel. Claire. Claire. I know it's fast. I know we're supposed to be taking it slow, but I can't help how I feel. I love how you are with Emily. I love how you make me laugh. I love that you kept a promise in a cookie tin for 23 years. I love who I am when I'm with you, and I'm not expecting you to say it back. I just needed you to know. Daniel sat on his couch in the dark, his phone illuminating his face, his heart doing acrobatics in his chest. 3 weeks. They'd been dating for 3 weeks. This was insane. This was too fast. This was everything he'd promised himself he wouldn't do. This was also the most right thing he'd felt in 6 years. Daniel, I love you too. He sent it before he could second guess, before fear could talk him out of it, before the rational part of his brain could list all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Claire, you don't have to say that just because I did. Daniel, I'm not. I mean it. I love you, Claire Monroe. I love your laugh and your stories and the way you brought sunflowers. I love how you were with Emily tonight. I love that you came back into my life and made me remember what hope feels like." His phone rang immediately. "Hi," Claire said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "Hi. Did you mean it?" "Every word. We're insane. People don't fall in love in 3 weeks." "Apparently we do." Claire laughed, watery and bright. "What do we do now?" "I have no idea. Keep doing what we're doing. Keep figuring it out." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I just know I don't want to stop. I don't want to slow down. I want more of this. More of you." "Me too. God, me too." They stayed on the phone for hours, talking and laughing and making plans that felt impossible and perfect. When they finally said goodnight, Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his chest tight with fear and hope and the terrifying certainty that he'd just jumped off a cliff. But this time, he wasn't falling alone. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of dinners and phone calls and stolen moments between Daniel's work and Emily's schedule. Claire came to Emily's soccer game on Saturday, cheered from the sidelines, and bought them both hot chocolate afterward. They went to the museum on Sunday, the three of them wandering through exhibits while Emily asked 1,000 questions, and Claire answered them with patience and genuine interest. It was easy. It was shockingly, terrifyingly easy. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon when Daniel was at work, his phone rang with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Probably spam, probably someone trying to sell him insurance he didn't need, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Daniel? It's Sarah." The world stopped turning. Sarah, his ex-wife, Emily's mother, the person who'd left and hadn't looked back. "Sarah." His voice came out flat. "Why are you calling?" "I'm in town. I wanted to see Emily." Every protective instinct Daniel possessed roared to life. "In town? Why? Does it matter? I'm her mother, Daniel. I have a right to see her." "You gave up that right when you left." He was standing now, pacing his office, trying to keep his voice down even though he wanted to scream. "You can't just show up after 4 years and expect, I know I screwed up. I know I handled things badly, but I've been working on myself. I'm in a better place now, and I want to be part of her life again." Daniel's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when things were finally good, finally stable, finally moving forward. "Emily doesn't need this kind of disruption," he said carefully. "She's happy. She's adjusted. You can't just waltz back in and, I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I just want to see her, have dinner with her, talk to her." Sarah's voice softened. "Please, Daniel. I'm staying at the Marriott on 5th. I'll be here through the weekend. Just think about it." She hung up before he could respond, and Daniel stood in his office with his phone in his hand, feeling like the ground had just opened beneath his feet. He called Claire. "Hey," she answered, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I was just thinking about Daniel? What's wrong?" Sarah called. "She's in town. She wants to see Emily." Silence. Then, "Oh. Yeah. Oh." Daniel sank into his chair, pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "I don't know what to do. I don't want her anywhere near Emily, but she's technically got rights, and if I refuse, she could make this legal and messy and—" "Breathe," Claire said firmly. "Just breathe for a second." Daniel breathed. "Okay. What do you want to do?" "I want to tell her to go to hell." "Understandable. But is that what's best for Emily?" The question cut through Daniel's panic. He thought about Emily, about how she'd asked about her mother sometimes when she was younger, about the birthday cards Emily kept in a box under her bed, even though they were generic and impersonal. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me thinks Emily deserves the chance to see her mother. Part of me thinks Emily deserves protection from someone who abandoned her." Both things can be true. "I'm scared, Claire. I'm scared Sarah will hurt her again. I'm scared she'll promise things she can't deliver. I'm scared Emily will get attached and then Sarah will leave again and I'll have to pick up the pieces." "I know, but Daniel, you can't protect Emily from every potential hurt. You can only be there when it happens." Claire's voice was gentle but firm. "Talk to Emily. Tell her the truth. Let her decide if she wants to see Sarah. Whatever she chooses, you support her, and I'll be right here supporting you both." It was the right answer, the only answer. But it didn't make it easier. That night, after dinner, Daniel sat Emily down and told her about the phone call. He watched her face carefully, trying to read her reaction, but she'd always been hard to read when it came to her mother. "She wants to see me?" Emily asked finally. "She says she does." "Do you want me to see her?" "This isn't about what I want, Em. This is about what you want." Emily was quiet for a long time, picking at a loose thread on the couch cushion. "Will you be there when I see her?" "If you want me to be." "And if I don't like it, can we leave?" "Absolutely." "Okay." Emily looked up at him, her eyes too old for 8. "I want to see her, but just for a little bit, and you have to be there the whole time." Daniel's heart broke and swelled simultaneously. "Okay, sweetheart. We'll make it work." He called Sarah back, arranged a meeting for Saturday afternoon at a neutral location, a cafe downtown where Emily had been before, somewhere public and safe. Then he called Claire. "She wants to see Sarah," he said without preamble. "Saturday. I'm terrified." "I know, but you're doing the right thing." "Am I?" "Yes. You're letting Emily make her own choices while keeping her safe. That's exactly what a good parent does." "Will you be available? After? In case Emily needs to talk to someone who's not me? Or in case I need to not completely lose it?" "I'll be wherever you need me to be. Always." Saturday arrived gray and cold, matching Daniel's mood perfectly. He and Emily got ready in near silence, Emily unusually quiet, Daniel's stomach in knots. They drove downtown, parked, walked into the cafe, and there was Sarah. She'd cut her hair short, colored it darker. She looked thinner, more polished, like the version of herself she'd always wanted to be but couldn't quite manage when she'd been exhausted by motherhood and domestic life. She stood when she saw them, and Daniel watched Emily's face carefully. "Hi, baby," Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. Emily stepped closer to Daniel, her hand finding his. "Hi." They sat down at a table by the window, ordered hot chocolates none of them would drink, and Daniel watched Sarah try to connect with the daughter she'd left behind. She asked about school and soccer and friends, and Emily answered in monosyllables, polite but distant. After 20 minutes, Sarah tried a different approach. "I know I haven't been around, Emily. I know I messed up. But I want you to know that I think about you all the time. I miss you." "Then why did you leave?" Emily's voice was small but steady. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Because I wasn't ready to be a mom. I thought I was, but I wasn't. And instead of staying and being bad at it, I thought leaving would be better. It wasn't better, it was worse. I know that now." Emily looked at Daniel, then back at Sarah. "Are you going to stay this time? Or are you just visiting?" "I don't know yet, baby. I'm trying to figure some things out. But I'd like to see you more, if that's okay." "I'll think about it." Emily stood up suddenly. "Daddy, can we go now?" Daniel stood immediately, grateful for the escape. "Of course, Sarah, I think that's enough for today." Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you for bringing her. Emily, I love you. I know I haven't shown it very well, but I do." Emily didn't respond, just walked toward the door. Daniel followed, his hand on her shoulder, his heart breaking for her. Outside, Emily took 3 steps down the sidewalk and then burst into tears. Daniel scooped her up even though she was getting too big to be carried, held her while she sobbed into his shoulder, murmuring reassurances that he wasn't sure he believed himself. "I wanted to not care," Emily cried. "I wanted to be okay with her being gone, but seeing her made it hurt again, and I don't understand why she left if she loved me." "I know, sweetheart. I know it hurts. Does Claire really love us? Or will she leave too?" The question gutted him. "Claire's not going anywhere, I promise." "You can't promise that. You promised Mom would always be there, and she left." Daniel had no answer for that. She was right. He couldn't make promises about other people's choices. All he could do was be there himself, show up every day, prove through action that not everyone left. He called Claire from the parking lot, and she arrived 15 minutes later, pulled Emily into a hug, and didn't ask questions. They went back to Daniel's house, the 3 of them, and Claire made hot chocolate while Daniel put on Emily's favorite movie. Emily curled up between them on the couch, and when she fell asleep halfway through, tear tracks still visible on her cheeks, Claire met Daniel's eyes over her head. "You okay?" she whispered. "No, but I will be." "What did she ask you?" "If you would leave too." Claire's expression crumpled. "What did you tell her?" "That you wouldn't. But she said I couldn't promise that." Daniel's voice was rough. "And she's right. I can't." "No, but I can." Claire reached across Emily, took Daniel's hand. "I'm not leaving, Daniel. Not you, not Emily, not this. I know it's only been a few weeks, and I know that doesn't seem like enough time to make that kind of promise, but I'm making it anyway. I'm here. I'm staying. Whatever comes, I'm in this." Daniel believed her, against all logic, against all the evidence that people left and promises broke, and happy endings were for other people. He believed her. "I love you," he said. "I love you too. Both of you." Emily stirred between them, blinked awake. "Claire? You're still here?" "I'm still here. Want me to stay for dinner?" "Yeah, can you make your grilled cheese, the one with the secret ingredient?" "Absolutely." And somehow, in the wreckage of the day, they found their way back to okay. The weeks following Sarah's reappearance were harder than Daniel had anticipated. Emily had agreed to see her mother again, once more at the cafe, then a brief visit to the park. But each encounter left her quiet and withdrawn for hours afterward. Daniel watched his daughter process emotions too complex for an 8-year-old, watched her try to reconcile the mother she'd built in her imagination with the real woman who kept promising to do better while offering no concrete evidence that she would. Claire was there through all of it. She didn't try to fix things or offer platitudes. She just showed up, made dinner on the hard nights, took Emily to the movies when distraction seemed necessary, sat with Daniel on the couch after Emily went to bed, and let him talk through his anger and fear without judgment. "I hate that she can just show up and undo months of healing," Daniel said one night, his head in his hands. Emily was doing so well. She was happy. And now she's asking questions again about why she wasn't enough to make her mother stay. Claire's hand rubbed circles on his back. "She's processing. That's healthy, even if it's painful. And Daniel, she has you. She has stability and love and someone who shows up every single day. Sarah can't undo that. It doesn't feel like enough." "It is enough. You are enough." Claire made him look at her. Emily knows the difference between someone who says they love her and someone who proves it. She's smart enough to see that. Daniel wanted to believe her. Some days he did. Other days he watched Emily stare at her phone, waiting for texts from Sarah that came sporadically or not at all, and he wanted to drive to Sarah's hotel and tell her to leave town and never come back. But he didn't. Because Emily had asked to see her mother, and Daniel had to trust that his daughter knew what she needed, even if it broke his heart to watch. 3 weeks after that first meeting, Sarah called and asked if she could take Emily to dinner alone. Just the two of them. A chance to talk without Daniel there. Every instinct Daniel possessed screamed no, but Emily had overheard the conversation, and her eyes had lit up with something that looked like hope. "Can I, Daddy? Please?" Daniel looked at his daughter, at the vulnerability in her expression, and felt his resolve crumble. "If you want to, but you call me if you need anything at all, and I want you home by 7:30. "Thank you." Emily hugged him fiercely. "I'll be careful. I promise." The night of the dinner, Daniel paced his house like a caged animal. Claire had offered to come over, but he'd declined, needing to sit with his anxiety alone. At 7:15, his phone rang. "Daddy?" Emily's voice was small, tight with tears. "Can you come get me?" Daniel was already grabbing his keys. "Where are you?" "The restaurant on Main Street, the Italian one." "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Stay inside where it's safe." He made it in 4, parked haphazardly, and found Emily sitting alone at a table near the window, her eyes red and swollen. Sarah was nowhere to be seen. "What happened?" Daniel asked, sliding into the booth beside her. "She left." Emily's voice broke. "We were eating and her phone rang and she took the call outside and then she came back and said she had to go. That something came up, that we'd reschedule." The tears spilled over. "She left me here, Daddy. She left again." White-hot rage flooded Daniel's system. But he pushed it down, focused on Emily. "Did she pay the bill?" Emily nodded. "And she left money for a taxi." but I called you instead. Good. You did exactly right. Daniel flagged down a server, explained they were leaving, and guided Emily out to the car. She cried the whole way home, great heaving sobs that tore at Daniel's heart, and he let her. There was nothing he could say that would make this better. Nothing that would erase the abandonment or the broken promise or the confirmation of Emily's deepest fear, that she wasn't important enough for her mother to stay. At home, Daniel held his daughter while she cried herself out. When the tears finally subsided into hiccups, Emily pulled back and looked at him with eyes that seemed decades older than they had that morning. I don't want to see her anymore, Emily said. I thought if I gave her another chance, she'd be different, but she's not. She's never going to be. You don't have to decide right now. You're upset. I'm not just upset. I'm done. Emily's voice was firm despite the tears. I have you. I have Grandma and Grandpa. I have Claire. I have people who actually show up. I don't need someone who only wants to be my mom when it's convenient. Daniel's heart broke and swelled simultaneously. His little girl, learning one of life's hardest lessons far too young. Okay, if that's what you want, I support you. Will you tell her? I don't want to talk to her again. I'll tell her. Emily hugged him again, then pulled back with a watery smile. Can we call Claire? I want to tell her about the new book I'm reading. The casual way she said it, the assumption that Claire would want to hear about her book, that Claire was someone safe to turn to, made Daniel's throat tight. Yeah, sweetheart, we can call Claire. Claire answered on the second ring, listened to Emily's earnest description of her latest chapter book for 20 minutes, and told her she sounded like a brilliant reader who was going to grow up to write her own book someday. When Emily finally went upstairs to get ready for bed, Claire's tone shifted. What really happened tonight? Daniel told her everything, his voice shaking with suppressed anger. She left her at a restaurant, Claire. Who does that to their own kid? Someone who shouldn't be a parent, Claire said quietly. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Is Emily okay? She's done with Sarah. Said she doesn't want to see her anymore. And how do you feel about that? Daniel thought about it. Relieved, angry that it came to this, but relieved that Emily made the choice herself, that she knows her worth. She learned that from you. I hope so. I know so. Claire paused. Do you want me to come over? Daniel did. God, he did. But Emily needed him tonight, needed his full attention, and he needed to prove to his daughter that she would always come first. Tomorrow, he said. Come for dinner tomorrow. I want to talk to you about something. That sounds ominous. It's not. I promise. Just tomorrow. Okay? Okay. Daniel, tell Emily I'm proud of her for knowing what she needed. I will. The next day, Daniel called Sarah and delivered Emily's decision in a voice that was calm and final. Sarah tried to argue, tried to make excuses, tried to promise she'd do better, but Daniel cut her off. Emily's done, Sarah. And honestly, so am I. You had 4 years to work on yourself, to decide you wanted to be a parent. You don't get to show up and disrupt our lives when it's convenient for you. Emily's happier without you. She has people who love her and show up for her consistently. She doesn't need someone who treats her like an obligation. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But Emily deserves better than this. So I'm asking you, as the mother of my child, to please respect her decision. Don't call. Don't text. If you want to send birthday cards, fine. But don't expect a relationship. Don't expect forgiveness. Just let her be happy. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I really did love her, you know. I just didn't know how to be what she needed. I know, but love isn't enough without action, and you didn't act, so now you have to live with that. He hung up before she could respond, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he felt like he could breathe. That evening, Claire arrived with flowers and a new book for Emily, who immediately dragged her upstairs to show her the latest drawings. Daniel made dinner, chicken that didn't burn, vegetables that were actually edible, and listened to the sound of Claire and Emily laughing above him. This was what family sounded like. Not perfect or traditional or what anyone would have predicted, but real and warm and full of people who chose each other every day. After dinner, after Emily had been tucked into bed with promises that Claire would come to her next soccer game, Daniel and Claire sat on the back porch despite the December cold. The treehouse was barely visible in the darkness, but Daniel knew it was there. a monument to promises kept and second chances. You said you wanted to talk about something, Claire said, pulling her coat tighter around her. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd been planning this for days, second-guessing himself, talking himself out of it, and back into it a dozen times. But watching Claire with Emily tonight, watching how naturally she fit into their lives, watching how she'd stood beside them through Sarah's chaos without flinching, he knew. I've been thinking about the promise, he said. The one from the cookie tin? Yeah, we promised to marry each other if we weren't married to other people by 30. We're both past 30 now. Claire smiled slightly. We are, but we also said we weren't going to let a promise made by 7-year-olds dictate our adult lives. Right, we said that. Daniel took a breath, made himself look at her. But what if I'm not asking because of the promise? What if I'm asking because I want to? Claire went very still. What are you asking, Daniel? I'm asking if you'd marry me. Not because we promised when we were kids. Not because it would make a good story or close some cosmic circle. But because I love you. Because you make me better. Because you love my daughter like she's already yours. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it. He pulled the small velvet box from his pocket, opened it to reveal the simple diamond ring he'd agonized over for hours at the jewelry store. I'm asking because I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life. And I'm hoping you'll choose me back. Claire's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over it. Daniel, you don't have to answer right now. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months. But Claire, when you know, and I know. How can you be sure? Her voice was shaking. After Sarah, after everything, how can you be sure enough to ask this? Because you're not Sarah. You've proven that every single day since we met again. You show up, you stay. You love Emily without expecting anything in return. You made me believe in second chances and happy endings and all the things I thought I'd lost forever. Daniel took her hands in his. I'm sure because my life was black and white before you walked back into it, and now it's in color. I'm sure because Emily asked when you're coming over, not if. I'm sure because loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done, even when everything else is hard. Claire was crying openly now, and Daniel felt his own eyes sting. This was it. The moment where she either said yes and they built the life he'd started to believe was possible, or she said no and he'd have to figure out how to be okay with that. Yes, Claire whispered. Daniel's heart stopped. What? Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. She laughed through her tears. I knew the night we had dinner with Emily. I knew when she asked if I was staying, and every cell in my body screamed that I wanted to stay forever. I've been terrified to admit it because it seemed impossible. But Daniel, I've never been more sure of anything. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did, because everything about this felt like it was always meant to be. Then he was kissing her, tasting salt and happiness and the promise of every tomorrow they'd build together. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying and slightly breathless, Claire held up her hand to look at the ring in the porch light. We're really doing this, she said, wonder in her voice. We're really doing this. What are we going to tell people? That we got engaged after 4 months? We could tell them it's been 26 years, technically, since the original promise. Claire laughed. I love that. 26 years in the making. Should we tell Emily tonight? Is that okay? I don't want to overwhelm her, especially after everything with Sarah. Emily will be thrilled, trust me. They went upstairs together, knocked softly on Emily's door. She was still awake, reading by her nightlight, and she looked up with curiosity when they entered. Hey, Em, Daniel said, sitting on the edge of her bed. Claire and I have something to tell you. Emily's eyes went wide. Are you getting married? Daniel and Claire looked at each other, startled. How did you... I'm not dumb. You've been acting weird all day, and Claire keeps looking at you like you're the best thing ever, and you keep smiling at nothing. Emily grinned. Also, Claire's wearing a ring she wasn't wearing at dinner. So are you getting married or not? We are, Claire said, holding out her hand so Emily could see the ring properly. If that's okay with you. We wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it. Emily studied the ring, then looked up at Claire with an expression so serious it made Daniel's chest tight. Are you going to be my mom? Like, For real? Claire glanced at Daniel, who nodded his encouragement. She turned back to Emily, choosing her words carefully. I would be honored to be your mom, if that's what you want. But I know you already have a mom, even if she's not around much. I don't want to replace her or make you forget her. I just want to be someone you can count on, someone who loves you and shows up for you and is proud to be part of your family. Emily thought about this for a moment. Can I call you Claire Mom? Like both names together? That way you're you, but you're also my mom, but it's different from regular mom? Claire's eyes filled with tears. Would love that. Claire Mom is perfect. Okay then, you can marry my dad. Emily launched herself at Claire, hugging her fiercely. But I get to be in the wedding, and I want a big fluffy dress, and I get to help pick the cake. Deal, Daniel said, pulling them both into his arms. All of that is a deal. They stayed like that for a long moment, the three of them tangled together on Emily's bed, and Daniel felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't even known was unsettled. This was his family. Not the family he'd planned when he was young and naive, not the family he'd tried to force into existence with Sarah, but the family that had found him when he'd stopped looking. Emily pulled back eventually, yawning. Can Claire Mom stay over? I want her to make breakfast. She makes better pancakes than you, Daddy. No offense. None taken. And yes, Claire can stay over. Yay! Emily snuggled back under her covers. This is the best day ever. Well, second best. The best was when we got our dog. We don't have a dog, Daniel said. Not yet. But we will eventually. I'm manifesting. Emily grinned at them. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Claire Mom. Good night, sweetheart, Claire said, kissing her forehead. They turned off her light and headed back downstairs, and Daniel pulled Claire into his arms in the hallway. Claire Mom, he said. That's pretty great. It's perfect. She's perfect. This is all perfect. Claire looked up at him. I can't believe this is my life now. 4 months ago, I was alone and convinced I'd messed up every relationship I'd ever had. Now I'm engaged to my childhood best friend and about to become a stepmom to the most amazing kid in the world. 4 months ago, I was convinced I'd be alone forever, that I'd had my chance at love and blown it, and the rest of my life would just be going through the motions for Emily's sake. Daniel kissed her forehead. And then you walked into that restaurant and everything changed. Best blind date ever. Definitely. They made their way to the couch, and Claire pulled out her phone. I should call Jenna. She's going to lose her mind. Marcus is going to claim full credit for this. They both will. And honestly, they kind of deserve it. Claire smiled at her phone, then looked up at Daniel. When should we get married? I don't need a big wedding or a long engagement. I just want to start our life together. What about spring? April, maybe. Emily's birthday is in April. We could make it a whole month of celebration. April is perfect. That gives us 4 months to plan. Claire paused. Your mom is going to cry, isn't she? She's going to cry so much. She's been waiting for this since Sarah left. Daniel pulled Claire closer. She's going to love you. Everyone's going to love you. I hope so. I want to do this right, Daniel. I want to be good for you and for Emily. I want to be the kind of partner and parent you both deserve. You already are. You have been since that first dinner at the Thai restaurant. Daniel cupped her face. You're choosing us every day. That's all we need. They stayed up late talking about the future, about wedding plans and honeymoons and whether they'd stay in Daniel's house or look for something bigger, about how to blend their lives, what traditions to keep, and what new ones to create, about the million small details that went into building a life together. At some point, they fell asleep on the couch, tangled together under a blanket, and woke to find Emily standing over them with a grin. You guys are cute, she announced. Also, Claire Mom, you promised pancakes. The next few months were a whirlwind. They told their families, Daniel's mother cried for 20 minutes straight, then demanded to help plan the wedding. Claire's father was cautiously supportive. Her mother sent a terse email of congratulations that Claire deleted without responding. Marcus and Jenna threw them an engagement party and absolutely took credit for the entire relationship. Sarah sent a card, just a generic congratulations with no personal message, and Emily threw it away without comment. Daniel watched her do it and felt nothing but pride for his daughter, who knew her worth. The wedding planning was surprisingly easy. They kept it small and simple, family and close friends, a ceremony in the backyard under the oak tree where the treehouse still stood, a reception at the house with catering from the Thai restaurant where they'd had their second date. Emily was the flower girl in the fluffiest dress the internet could provide, and she took her job very seriously. April arrived with sunshine and cherry blossoms and the kind of perfect weather that made people believe in signs. The morning of the wedding, Daniel woke early and went to the treehouse one last time. It had been 26 years since he'd carved those initials, since he'd made a promise with a girl who'd become his whole world without either of them knowing it. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of the carved heart, sent it to Claire with the caption, "Started here, ending here, full circle." She responded immediately, "Beginning here, not ending. This is just the start." The ceremony was perfect in all the ways that mattered. Emily walked down the aisle, scattering flower petals with abandon. Daniel's mother cried into tissues she'd brought specifically for that purpose. And when Claire appeared in a simple white dress with sunflowers in her hair, Daniel felt his breath catch in his throat. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was his, and he was hers. Finally, completely, irrevocably, they said their vows under the oak tree, promising to love and honor and choose each other every single day. Emily stood beside them holding the rings, beaming with pride. When the officiant pronounced them married, Daniel kissed his wife while their daughter cheered and their friends applauded, and the world felt exactly right. At the reception, Emily gave a speech she'd written herself, reading from index cards in her careful handwriting. "My dad is the best dad in the whole world," she announced to everyone, "and Claire Mom is the best Claire Mom in the whole world. I'm really glad they found each other again because now we're a real family. Also, I was right about the donuts. Good donuts never lie." Everyone laughed, and Daniel pulled Emily into a hug while Claire wiped away happy tears. Later, during their first dance, Claire looked up at Daniel with eyes full of wonder. "We did it. We actually did it." "We did. How does it feel?" "Like coming home. Like everything I've been through is just leading me back to you." She smiled. 7-year-old me would be so proud. 7-year-old me would be terrified. I had no idea what I was promising. "Do you now?" Daniel looked around the backyard, at Emily dancing with Marcus, at his mother laughing with Jenna, at the treehouse standing sentinel over everything, at the life they'd built from a childhood promise and blind chance, and the courage to choose love even when it was terrifying. "Yeah," he said, "I know exactly what I promised. Everything, forever, you and Emily, and whatever comes next. I promised all of it." "Good, because that's what I'm promising too." They danced under the stars while their families celebrated around them, and Daniel thought about all the promises he'd made in his life. Promises to his father to take care of the house, promises to Emily to always show up, always be there, always choose her first, promises to himself to never risk his heart again after Sarah left. And now this promise, the one he'd made at 7 and kept for 26 years without even knowing he was keeping it. The promise to marry Claire Monroe if they weren't married to other people by 30. They were late by 3 years, but as Claire had said, some things were worth waiting for. The party lasted until midnight, and when the last guest finally left, Daniel and Claire and Emily sat on the back porch steps looking up at the stars. Emily was still in her fluffy dress, fighting sleep, but refusing to admit it. "This was the best day," Emily said, her head on Claire's shoulder. "Even better than my birthday." "Even better than Christmas?" Claire asked. "Way better, because now we're officially a family, like legally and everything." "We were already a family, sweetheart," Daniel said. "The papers just made it official." "I know, but official is important." Emily yawned. "Claire, Mom?" "Yeah?" "I'm really glad you came to dinner that night. I'm glad you and Daddy knew each other when you were kids. I'm glad you kept the promise." Claire looked at Daniel over Emily's head, and in her eyes he saw everything, gratitude and love and the quiet certainty that they'd somehow, impossibly, gotten it right. "Me too, Emily. Me too." They sat there until Emily finally admitted she was tired, and Daniel carried her upstairs while Claire followed. They tucked her into bed together, this routine they'd perfected over the past months, and Emily grabbed both their hands. "I love you," she said sleepily. "Both of you. My whole family. We love you too, they said in unison, and Emily smiled as she drifted off. In their own room, their room now, officially, since Claire had moved in 2 months ago, Daniel pulled his wife close and breathed in the scent of her hair, the reality of her presence. I can't believe you're my wife, he said. I can't believe you're my husband. I can't believe Emily is my daughter. I can't believe any of this is real. It's real. I promise it's real. Claire tilted her head up to kiss him. Good. Because I'm never letting go of this. Of you. Of us. Never letting go sounds perfect. They fell asleep tangled together, and sometime in the night Emily climbed into bed between them, the way she still sometimes did when she needed the comfort of knowing her family was close. Daniel woke to find his daughter on one side and his wife on the other, both of them sleeping peacefully, and felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to his eyes. This was what keeping a promise looked like. Not the romantic gesture of a 7-year-old with a marker and a cookie tin, but the daily choice to show up, to stay, to love, even when it was hard, to build a life brick by brick until it was solid enough to withstand anything. He'd promised to marry Claire Monroe 26 years ago, and he'd kept that promise. But more importantly, he was promising to keep choosing her every day for the rest of his life. And she was promising the same. Some people might say it was fate that brought them back together. Some might call it coincidence or luck or divine intervention. Daniel didn't care what it was called. He only cared that it happened, that the girl from the treehouse had become the woman in his bed, that the promise made in childhood had become the foundation of his adult life. In the morning, they'd wake up and make pancakes and probably burn them because they'd get distracted talking. Emily would tell them about the dream she'd had, something involving flying unicorns and pizza. They'd laugh and clean up the kitchen together and probably argue about whose turn it was to do the dishes. They'd be normal and imperfect and beautifully, wonderfully real. But for now, in the quiet hours before dawn, Daniel Hayes held his family close and counted his blessings. A daughter who taught him about resilience and unconditional love. A wife who taught him about second chances and the courage to risk everything. A life that had taken him through darkness and brought him back to light. And somewhere in the backyard, a treehouse stood as a monument to a promise kept, not because 7-year-olds understood forever, but because 2 adults chose to make forever real. The promise had resurfaced exactly when it needed to, and Daniel had chosen not to run from it, but to run toward it, to choose the present moment with all its complexity and possibility. To build something lasting with Claire and Emily, something that honored the past while creating a future none of them could have predicted. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined at 7 or 17 or even 27. It was better. It was real. It was earned through heartbreak and healing, through showing up and staying present, through the radical act of choosing love when fear would have been easier. And as the sun began to rise over the treehouse, and the family sleeping peacefully inside, Daniel made one more promise, to himself this time, to never take this for granted, to remember that love was a verb, not a noun, to show up every single day and choose his family, choose his life, choose the extraordinary, ordinary moments that made up a life worth living. The promise made at 7 had been kept at 33, but the promises made today, tomorrow, and every day after, those were the ones that would define the rest of their lives. And Daniel was ready for all of them. He was finally, completely, perfectly home.